The millionaire CEO was simply enjoying the holiday spirit when his gaze locked onto the twin singers on stage. But as they turned to face the crowd, his heart stopped. Those were his eyes, his smile, his children. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The snow fell softly in the early morning light, blanketing the streets of the bustling city. Inside the grand ballroom of Linwood Enterprises, preparations for the annual Christmas gala were in full swing. A row of elegant chandeliers glittered overhead, reflecting on the polished marble floor. Towering fir trees stood at every corner, adorned with flickering lights and delicate ornaments. It was in this opulent, glowing setting that CEO Jack Linwood arrived, stepping out of a sleek limousine, unaware that by the end of this evening, his entire life would change. Jack had built his reputation as a business prodigy, ruthless in negotiations, strategic in expansions, and revered by the corporate world. He carried himself with the practiced confidence of a man who knew his worth. That night, dressed in a tailored black suit, he planned to give his usual end-of-year speech, congratulate his employees for their hard work, and make a grand donation to the company's favorite charity. To Jack, it was just another public relations event to uphold his impeccable image. Never had it crossed his mind that the highlight of the night wouldn't be his speech, but two young voices singing in perfect harmony on stage. At exactly 7 p.m., the lavish doors to the ballroom swung open. The clink of champagne glasses and soft hum of conversation set the tone. Jack noticed how the city's elite had turned up for the festivities: board members, politicians, socialites. Photographers flitted around, capturing each moment of glamour. Yet, in the midst of the swirling crowd, a quiet presence went almost unnoticed. Ava Nelson, an introverted but talented photographer hired to document the event. She wore a simple black dress, blending seamlessly with the decor staff. A sharp observer might have seen her well-worn camera bag, or the way she adjusted lenses with a deft, practiced hand. But few people paid her any mind. Ava was used to that. From the start, the evening pulsed with excitement. A children's choir from a local music school had been invited to perform. They rehearsed near the stage, their melodic voices floating through the air. Ava quickly positioned herself at the foot of the platform, snapping photos of the kids as they warmed up. Her gaze softened each time she caught sight of two particular twins, Emma and Ethan, both around 6 or 7 years old, with playful eyes and bright smiles. They sang with such sincerity that Ava felt a surge of pride welling in her chest. She raised her camera and captured their wide, hopeful faces, never suspecting that someone else across the room was watching the exact same moment, but through a very different lens. Jack Linwood, indifferent to these performances in previous years, found himself inexplicably drawn to the children's choir. Maybe it was the sweet carols echoing around him, or perhaps it was the sudden hush among the guests that piqued his curiosity. While others turned their attention to the waiters circulating with hors d'oeuvres, Jack found his eyes fixated on the small group of boys and girls preparing to sing. Something about them, about two of them in particular, made his pulse quicken. When the performance began, Emma and Ethan stood out immediately. Their voices rang pure and bright, weaving together like threads of silver and gold. The boy had a confident stance, eyebrows lifting every time he hit a high note, while the girl's face lit up with each line. They were perfectly in tune. Jack, who had never taken much interest in children, felt his chest tighten. An odd sense of recognition tugged at him. He couldn't explain it. He inched closer, keeping a respectable distance, though his gaze never left those two children. Then, a single startling thought intruded. Their features, the shape of their cheeks, the line of their jaw, reminded him of himself. As if propelled by an invisible force, Jack moved even closer, weaving through the guests. A memory flickered unbidden in his mind. An encounter from years ago, fleeting but vivid. He barely remembered her face, just that she had been a photographer covering a charity event for one of his real estate ventures. They had spoken briefly, then parted ways, and his busy life had swept all recollection of that meeting under the rug. Yet now, seeing these twins who seemed to bear his own reflection, Jack felt the fragments of that memory pushing to the surface, demanding his attention. On stage, Emma noticed the tall figure staring at them with such intensity. Confused, she glanced over at Ethan. Her brother nodded minutely, as if to reassure her, and they continued singing. At the end of their song, the crowd erupted in applause, and many guests, flushed with holiday joy, whispered to each other about how charming the choir was. Jack, however, stood in stunned silence, uncertain whether to applaud or run, uncertain if he was seeing ghosts. When the children filed off stage, Jack stepped forward as if to follow them, but a barrage of board members intercepted him, shaking his hand and vying for his attention. "Jack, wonderful event as always. Linwood, you outdo yourself every year. Will you be making your speech soon?" He forced a polite smile, nodding to each greeting, while inside him a tempest raged. For the first time in his life, the demands of high society were nothing but static in his ears. He waved off most interactions, murmuring something about a pressing matter, then left them baffled as he moved toward the corridor leading backstage. His heart thumped violently. He couldn't help but replay the children's faces in his mind. Could it truly be possible? Behind the scenes, Ava was congratulating Emma and Ethan in hushed tones. The twins beamed with pride and relief at having performed well. Ava knelt, ruffling Ethan's hair. "You two were perfect," she said softly. "Absolutely perfect." Her cheeks were flushed, though part of that might have been from the bright stage lights. She handed them water bottles, her own heart still pounding from the tension of the performance. Just then, a staff member approached to tell Ava that the CEO was about to give his annual speech. "We need more photos in the main ballroom," he informed her. She nodded, carefully guiding Emma and Ethan to a quieter corner behind a thick velvet curtain, instructing them to wait there while she took a few pictures. "Stay put," she whispered, her eyes reflecting a strange mixture of nerves and maternal protectiveness. "I'll be right back." The twins settled quietly, sipping their water. Emma gave Ethan a playful nudge. "Did you see that tall man watching us? The one with the fancy suit?" Ethan nodded, shrugging. "He seemed nice, but kinda serious, right?" Moments later, Jack emerged from the opposite end of the corridor. He surveyed the backstage area, scanning for any sign of the choir. A swirl of leftover confetti and ribbons littered the floor, hinting at the festive chaos that had consumed the main hall. His ears still rang with applause. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he spotted two small figures behind the curtain. His heart gave a jump. Those were the very children who had shattered his composure just minutes ago. He paused, uncertain how to approach. After all, how do you confront an impossible reality? Emma and Ethan stared at him with wide eyes as he slowly advanced. They neither flinched nor spoke. For Jack, an eternity stretched in that simple moment. "Hello there," he began softly, clearing the sudden lump in his throat. "You both sing beautifully." "Thank you," Emma replied shyly while Ethan eyed him with a curious tilt of his head. Silence settled again. Jack couldn't decide if he should ask them about their parents, their backgrounds, or if that would come across as too intrusive. What if he was mistaken? Yet some powerful instinct told him he was not. From across the stage, the roar of applause erupted anew, signaling that the choir had been called back for an encore performance. Jack realized time was running short if he intended to speak with them. He took a small step closer, kneeling to meet them eye to eye. "I'm Jack," he said quietly, forcing a gentle smile. "I run the company hosting this event. And you are—" The twins exchanged looks. "I'm Ethan," said the boy carefully. "This is my sister, Emma. Our mom is—" He trailed off, uncertain if he should reveal more. But before he could decide, a voice called from behind them. Ethan, Emma, the next song is Oh. Ava stood there, camera in hand, eyes locked on Jack. In that electrifying instant, the air itself seemed to freeze. Jack rose to his feet, recognition and shock playing across his features as he looked at Ava and then again at the twins. He realized, with an impact like thunder, that the memory that had haunted him since the children started singing was not a mere illusion. It was real. He had seen Ava's face before, on a night that was now unraveling his carefully constructed world. She gripped the camera strap anxiously, her breath quickening. Jack could almost see the same alarm and hesitation swirling in Ava's expression that he felt in his own. Could they possibly share a past that resulted in two children who looked just like him? At that moment, a staff member's voice blared over the sound system, announcing that Mr. Linwood's Christmas address was about to begin. Jack gave Ava a pointed look, voice trembling. "Don't go anywhere. We need to talk. Immediately." Ava's heart pounded so loudly she thought it might echo through the backstage corridor. In the glitter of the Christmas gala, time seemed suspended as she locked eyes with Jack Linwood. The tension between them was palpable. Here was the CEO of the massive empire she had heard so much about, the man known for his ice-cold boardroom persona, now wearing an expression that flickered between shock and urgency. Around them, staff bustled, calling instructions for the upcoming performances, but Ava felt as though the two of them were in a silent bubble, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. Yet the real world intruded fast. A junior manager in a crisp black suit rushed up with a clipboard pressed to his chest. "Mr. Linwood, we're ready for your address," he said, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. He gestured anxiously toward the stage. "The board is expecting you." A quick glance at the overhead monitor confirmed that hundreds of guests were already seated, anticipating Jack's annual holiday speech. The crowd was large enough to be visible from the side stage, a sea of shimmering gowns and tailored suits, all waiting for the charismatic CEO to deliver his carefully planned remarks. Jack clenched his jaw, gaze darting from the manager to Ava. He could feel the threads of his well-orchestrated image threatening to unravel. How could he stand under that spotlight, reciting holiday platitudes, when his personal life had just collided with him in the most dramatic fashion? He leaned in toward Ava, lowering his voice to a hush. "Don't leave," he repeated, each syllable weighted. "Wait for me right here, or find me after, but do not vanish." There was a faint tremor in his tone, an uncharacteristic emotion that Ava found both surprising and unnerving. She gave a curt nod, unsure whether to speak. A flurry of conflicting emotions churned inside her. Fear of what might happen if Jack learned the full truth, but also a faint glimmer of relief at not having to hide anymore. In a single fleeting moment, she found a certain resolve. After all these years, maybe it was time to stop burying the past. Moments later, Jack turned on his heel and strode through the narrow hallway, crossing onto the main stage. Applause broke out the instant he appeared under the floodlights. The entire ballroom resounded with appreciation, as though the assembled guests could sense he would deliver the highlight of the evening. A plush podium with the Linwood Enterprises logo stood front and center, waiting for him. As Jack approached, that perfectly practiced CEO mask slipped back over his features. Even while confusion and anxiety waged war inside him, externally he remained the impeccable businessman, chin high, back straight, handshake at the ready. He cleared his throat into the microphone, forcing a cordial smile. "Good evening, everyone," he began, voice echoing elegantly off the gold-leafed walls. "Welcome to our annual Christmas Gala. It's an honor to celebrate this season of giving with all of you. Thank you for joining us tonight." Outwardly, Jack spoke with practiced ease about the company's achievements, about how the spirit of the holidays reminded them of unity, of generosity. He thanked the board for their leadership, praised his employees for their hard work, and sprinkled in just the right amount of warm humor. Yet internally, each sentence felt mechanical. Flashes of Emma's and Ethan's faces intruded on his concentration, the boy's open, curious gaze, the girl's sweet voice. He recalled his moment backstage, the shock in Ava's eyes, the hush that fell when she recognized him. It was impossible to concentrate. Through the haze, he managed to recite the official speech. Applause burst out at the end, and he stepped down from the podium, smiling automatically for the cameras. He was immediately cornered by the CFO, the head of marketing, and a wave of investors wanting a word. Even the mayor, a longtime acquaintance, hovered expectantly, hinting that he wanted to discuss a new real estate project. Jack forced himself to maintain composure, exchanging pleasantries and polite half-smiles. But after 15 minutes of going in circles, he made a firm excuse about meeting another guest. The pretext was flimsy, but his tone allowed no argument. The managers and investors glanced at each other with puzzlement as he disengaged, weaving back through the throng in search of Ava. Meanwhile, in the backstage corridor, Ava had taken Emma and Ethan aside to a quieter corner. She placed a gentle hand on each twin's shoulder, summoning all the calm she could. "I need you two to wait in the dressing room, okay?" She motioned to a door marked "Performers Only." The children exchanged anxious looks, sensing the tension from their mother. "But Mom," Ethan ventured, "is everything okay? That man said he wants to—" "I know," Ava cut in softly, giving them a reassuring smile. "I just need to speak with him. Alone. Please." Despite the fear swirling in her, she maintained a soothing tone for their sake. "I promise everything will be all right." The twins nodded, though Emma hesitated. She bit her lip and finally asked, "Did we do something wrong by singing to him?" Ava's heart twisted at the innocence in her daughter's question. "No, sweetheart, not at all. You both were wonderful. This is just grown-up stuff." She drew them in for a quick hug, feeling the warmth of their small bodies pressed against her. For a fleeting moment, she let herself marvel at how far they had come. She had raised them alone, with no support or recognition from the man who was now about to re-enter her life in the most chaotic manner. She nudged them gently toward the dressing room. "Don't worry. Read a book or something on your tablets until I get back." It took all her willpower to keep her voice from trembling. Emma and Ethan slipped through the door, glancing back uncertainly before closing it. Once alone, Ava leaned against the corridor wall, exhaling shakily. Could she really do this? She remembered the look of astonishment on Jack's face. It was too close to the expression she had feared so many years ago, when she first learned she was pregnant, when she realized that her brief connection with the elusive CEO had changed her life. She'd tried to get in touch then, but her messages went unanswered. She'd concluded he was either ignoring her or had never gotten those messages in the first place. Eventually, she had decided it was best for her to raise the twins alone, forging a quiet existence as a freelance photographer in a smaller suburb. Yet here they were. By some twist of fate or cosmic irony, she had been hired for this event, unaware it was Jack Linwood's cherished gala. How could she not have guessed? Linwood Enterprises was massive, yes, but how many grand corporate gatherings took place at Christmas time? Ava berated herself for not doing more research, but she also knew in her heart that part of her had never stopped wondering if Emma and Ethan would unknowingly cross paths with their father. And part of her had wanted that day to come. The hallway lights flickered momentarily as someone opened the exit door. Ava stiffened. Jack appeared at the far end of the corridor, scanning each corner until his gaze settled on her. She swallowed hard, noticing the tautness in his posture, the aura of a man trying to keep his calm but unraveling inside. "You're still here," he said quietly, striding forward. He hesitated, glancing around to ensure they were alone. "Thank you." His usual corporate smoothness dropped, revealing a raw edge to his voice. Ava pressed her lips together. "I told you I would be." She tried to sound composed but sensed the shakiness creeping in. Jack opened his mouth, then closed it. raking a hand through his meticulously styled hair. Finally, he asked in a low, urgent tone, "Those children? They belong to you? You're their mother?" "Yes." He paused again, seemingly grappling with the import of what he needed to ask next. "And are they—" He trailed off, unable to complete the sentence. Ava inhaled, her eyes meeting his directly. "Yes, they're your children." There, she had said it, the truth that had loomed for years. In that instant, Jack's face registered a tumult of emotions: shock, confusion, a flicker of wonder, and perhaps even a trace of anger. His breath caught. "How? I mean, I don't understand," he stammered. "Why didn't you—" She could feel her own pulse drumming in her ears, every nerve bracing for the backlash. "Why didn't I tell you? I tried. I sent letters and emails to your office. I even left a message with your assistant. It wasn't just once. It was multiple times. When I got no response, I assumed you weren't interested or never received them. Eventually, I decided the only choice was to move on. I was young, Jack. I didn't have the resources to keep trying." His jaw tightened, eyes flashing. "I never got any letters," he whispered, a hint of disbelief. "I would have at least—" He paused, seemed to catch himself. Another wave of shock passed over him. "I would have done something." Ava's eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and relief. "Well, that's all behind us now, isn't it? Because we're here tonight, face to face, and yes, Emma and Ethan are yours." Silence stretched, waited. A wave of distant carols from the main ballroom drifted through the corridor. Jack looked away for a moment, his mind evidently spinning. When he spoke again, his voice sounded steadier, though still laced with emotion. "They sang beautifully. They have such talent." Ava nodded, blinking back tears that threatened to form. "They love music. They've both taken to singing since they were little. I never told them much about you, other than that you were someone I once knew." Jack's eyes darkened with guilt. "I see." He breathed in deeply, as if preparing for a negotiation of a lifetime, except in this case, the stakes were immeasurable. "Listen, can we talk privately? Somewhere away from all these people? Please, I need to understand everything." Ava watched him closely, seeing something new in his expression, an unguarded sincerity that few outside his immediate circle ever witnessed. She didn't trust it entirely yet. The memory of being ignored and left alone all those years ago still stung too fiercely. But for the children's sake, she nodded. "Yes. Okay. The kids are in the dressing room next door. We can go somewhere quiet, but it won't be for long. Emma and Ethan will want to know what's happening." "All right." He ran a hand over his jaw, exhaling. "I'll tell my staff I'm handling a personal matter. They won't question me too much." A trace of his commanding posture reemerged. "But please don't leave. I can't let this end here." Before Ava could respond, the door to the corridor opened once more and a woman in an elegant emerald dress poked her head in. "Jack," she called, voice overly familiar. "They're asking for you in the VIP lounge. Apparently a press photographer wants a quick statement about the charity fundraising. Shall I tell them you'll be right there?" Jack's eyes flicked to Ava, torn. He muttered something curt to the woman about waiting, then turned back. Ava merely nodded. "Go handle it, I'll be here." This entire situation might have been overwhelming, but she understood the demands of such an event. "I'm not running," she added more softly. Jack glanced at her with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. "Thank you." With that, he left again, determined to sever social obligations as quickly as possible. Alone once more, Ava slumped against the wall. Her mind churned. An avalanche of questions loomed. What would happen if Jack decided to assert his paternal rights? Would he disrupt the small, precious life she had built for the twins? Or would he prove a caring father who wanted to be part of their lives? The quiet hum of distant violins from the ballroom floated over her. All Ava knew for certain was that the Christmas gala no longer felt like a routine work assignment. It had become a crossroads between past, present, and future. And the next conversation she would have with Jack Linwood could rewrite every chapter of their story, and Emma and Ethan's as well. A glimmer of dawn lighted the far edges of the night sky by the time Jack Linwood finally managed to slip away from the VIP lounge. A group of talkative executives had cornered him, and though he was adept at dealing with corporate types, his mind was miles away, back in the corridor where Ava waited, and where the mother of his children had just upended everything he thought he knew about his life. By the time he returned backstage, the energy of the event had begun to shift. The choir's performance was finished, guests were drifting toward the exit for the after-party, and staff members were packing up. Yet for Jack, the night was far from over. He found Ava standing near a set piece, a large decorated Christmas tree earmarked for dismantling, her camera bag slung over her shoulder, looking exhausted but resolute. "I'm sorry," he began quietly, stepping close. "There were people I couldn't just brush off, but we can talk now." Despite his attempt at composure, the gravity of the moment weighed on every syllable. Ava nodded. She'd been replaying her own series of events, instructing Emma and Ethan to stay in the dressing room, pacing the corridor, worrying about what Jack might do, how he would react. "We should find somewhere quiet," she said. "I don't want the twins involved yet. Not until—" Her voice cracked slightly. Jack glanced at the nearby stage door that led into the main hall, from which music still drifted. "I booked a suite upstairs for the night, part of the holiday event. It's private, and the kids can stay here until we figure out how to manage this conversation." She tensed, unsure if being alone in his suite was wise. But the relentless noise in the corridors wouldn't give them the privacy they needed. "All right," she agreed, pressing her lips into a thin line. "Let's not take too long. The twins can't be left alone indefinitely." "We'll be quick," Jack promised. They were nearly out of the corridor when a staff member in black slacks came rushing up to Ava. "Excuse me, Ms. Nelson?" The staffer looked flustered, holding a half-ruined schedule of the night's performances. "We've processed your payment, but there's a small formality we need you to sign, finalizing the coverage for the event pictures. Could you?" The request was routine for a hired photographer, but at that moment, it felt like one more trial. Ava forced a tight smile. "Yes, sure," she said, taking the paperwork. "I'll do it immediately after." Her gaze flicked to Jack, who waited, frustration simmering beneath his calm exterior. The staffer nodded and hurried off again. Jack gave Ava an apologetic glance. "I can have my assistant handle that if you'd like." "No," Ava interrupted firmly. "I prefer handling my own contracts. It's fine. Let's just go talk." They ascended a private elevator to a top-floor suite reserved for VIPs. Polished brass gleamed under subdued lighting, and mirrors on each side reflected their tense expressions. Neither spoke. Ava avoided Jack's gaze, scanning the elevator floor instead. He stood with shoulders rigid, arms crossed lightly in front of him as if steeling himself. When the elevator doors opened, the suite appeared like a luxury haven. Carpet plush underfoot, a crystal chandelier overhead. Double doors at the end of a hallway led into a spacious living area with floor-to-ceiling windows. Even with the city lights twinkling below, the entire space felt oddly hushed, a silent bubble suspended above the nighttime bustle. Jack gestured for Ava to enter. "Please, make yourself comfortable," he said, though the formality in his voice felt forced. Ava stepped into the living room, set her camera bag on a nearby chair, and turned to face him. The instant the door shut, he released a pent-up breath. "I don't even know where to begin," he admitted, raking a hand through his hair. "You could start by asking any question that you've been dying to ask since you found out," she replied softly, crossing her arms protectively. The question she expected was the same one that had echoed in her mind for years. Why didn't I know? But she also recognized that the father of her children might be reeling from more than just the past. Jack stared at the plush sofa, then indicated it. "Let's sit. We'll talk better that way." Reluctantly, Ava perched on one side, while Jack settled on the other, a careful distance between them. She could feel the tension humming in the space, as if the slightest misstep might ignite a confrontation neither wanted. "So," he began, voice low, "Emma and Ethan, they're about 6 or 7? 7, Ava corrected quietly. "They turned 7 just last month." He nodded, absorbing that. 7, he repeated under his breath. "They must be in 1st grade. 2nd, Ava answered. "They skipped a year. They're bright, especially with anything creative or involving reading. They love music and drawing. They're good kids." Her voice wavered. "I'm proud of them." A flicker of sadness crossed Jack's features, and he pressed his fingers together as if trying to keep them steady. "I can see that. They look really happy from what little I saw." She nodded. "We manage. I've tried to give them a stable life." Silence settled. Jack inhaled through his nose, exhaled through his mouth, then asked the question that weighed on him most. "Why didn't I know, Ava? I mean, truly know. If you tried to contact me, how could I have missed that? Were you sending them to my office? Did someone intercept them? Did you try to see me in person?" Pain flashed across Ava's face. "I didn't have your personal information. You were unreachable, like someone in a fortress. I got the runaround from your staff, so eventually I tried mailing letters to your corporate headquarters. Then I left voicemails on your office line. I kept calling, but I kept hitting a stone wall. After a while, I had to accept that no one would let me talk to you. Or maybe you'd told them to shut me out." His brow furrowed in a mixture of confusion and anger. "I swear, that was never my directive. My office lines are screened, yes, but if you'd said it was urgent, someone had to pass the message along." "They didn't," Ava said bitterly. "So I gave up." Jack's gaze dropped. He struggled with a surge of guilt. In his world, it wasn't uncommon for gatekeepers to filter calls mercilessly, especially after short flings or chance encounters that unscrupulous women might exploit. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "It seems someone on my staff made a decision on my behalf, and it cost me 7 years of not knowing about my own children." Ava swallowed hard. "I don't want to fight about who's at fault. That's not going to fix anything. But you asked for the truth, so here it is. I tried, and then I just stopped. I started freelancing, raising my babies alone. I had no illusions you'd ever be part of their lives." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, face haunted by remorse. "You must think I'm horrible," he murmured. "Some wealthy jerk who fathered children and vanished." "I did think that for a while," she admitted, "but then I realized that ignorance might be the only reason. Still, it hurt." He nodded, accepting her perspective with a pained expression. Another pause, thick with emotion, stretched between them. "So what happens now?" he finally asked, voice trembling. "I can't just walk away, not after seeing them, hearing them sing, feeling this connection. They're mine, Ava, our kids." She clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay composed. "I know, and I won't lie. I'm terrified of what your involvement might bring. Your life is huge, complicated, always in the spotlight. The kids and I, we live simply. We don't have paparazzi tailing us or tabloids writing headlines." Jack's eyes hardened with sudden conviction. "I won't let them be hounded. I'll protect them, keep them out of the public eye if that's what it takes." Ava studied him. This was a side of Jack she'd never seen. The father who, despite all the confusion, seemed determined to claim responsibility. "That's noble," she said gently. "But it won't be easy. The media watches you closely." He shook his head. "I've shielded my private life before. Yes, it can be intense, but I can manage it. The question is, will you let me be part of their lives? Even if it means changes, I have the resources to help with their education, their passions. I don't want to come barging in like some corporate overlord, but I do want to be their dad. The longing in his voice was unmistakable. Ava felt her resolve waver. She'd always prepared for the possibility that one day Jack might show up, claiming paternal rights. Yet she'd also prayed that if he did, it would be because he genuinely cared and not because of pride or fear of scandal. "I need to think about how to transition them," she said quietly. "They've lived 7 years without a father figure. I can't just say, 'Hey kids, guess who's here overnight?'" "Of course," Jack said. "I'll earn their trust. One step at a time. Let me do it right. That means starting slow. Maybe you get to know them as a friend first. We'll figure out the details." Ava hesitated, tears prickling her eyes. "But I do believe Emma and Ethan deserve to know who you are. It's not fair to them to keep you away if you truly want to be involved." A wave of gratitude crossed his face. "Thank you," he whispered, voice thick. "I promise I won't mess this up if you give me the chance." Ava let out a shaky breath. The tension that had knotted her shoulders began to ease, replaced by an uncertain hope. "Let's talk to them. Not right this second, but soon. Maybe tomorrow or the next day once the gala chaos is over." Jack nodded slowly. "I can clear my schedule or arrange something quiet. Dinner at your place or—" She gave him a wan half-smile, touched by the earnestness. "We'll sort it out. For now, we should go check on them. They must be wondering where I am." "Right." Jack stood but paused, looking at Ava with a searching gaze. "I need you to know something. I'm not always the easiest man to deal with. My life, my responsibilities. I can be distracted. But if I'd known, I would have stepped up." "I believe you," she said softly. "At least, I'm willing to try." They headed back to the elevator, tension ebbing. It was as if a fragile truce had formed, a mutual understanding that despite the rocky past, the future rested on how they handled each next step. As they rode down in silence, Ava remembered the swirl of the children's voices on stage, the innocence shining in their eyes. She whispered a small prayer that Emma and Ethan would understand, that they could open their hearts to a father they never knew they had. When they reached the dressing room door, Ava turned the knob quietly. Inside, the twins had fallen asleep on a small couch, leaning against each other's shoulders. Their coloring books lay spread across a table, crayons scattered. A wave of maternal love washed over Ava, followed by an ache of anxiety. Jack stood behind her, looking at them with awe. She heard his breath hitch. "They're beautiful," he whispered, voice almost cracking. "So incredible." Ava nodded, gently picking up a blanket to drape it over the sleeping children. She offered Jack a brief, poignant look. "Let them rest for tonight. We'll come up with a plan tomorrow." He swallowed, glancing from the twins to her. "Tomorrow," he echoed softly. Quietly, they left the children to sleep. Ava promised she'd take them home soon. Jack insisted on walking her out to the curb where a staff driver she'd arranged was waiting. A swirl of city lights and snow flurries made the moment feel surreal. As she climbed into the car, Ava spotted Jack in the rearview mirror, standing alone in the softly falling snow, hands in his pockets, eyes troubled yet hopeful. Neither of them could have foreseen how complicated the road ahead might be. But as the driver pulled away from the glimmering hotel, Ava found herself feeling a renewed sense of possibility. For the first time in years, the burden of secrecy was gone, and though the path forward might be messy, at least it was a path they could try to navigate together, for the sake of Emma and Ethan, two bright souls who, in the middle of a Christmas gala, had unknowingly revealed to the world that miracles come in many forms. Dawn broke over the city with a grayish tint, hinting at light snow soon to follow. In a modest suburban home a few miles from the heart of downtown, Ava stood by the kitchen window sipping hot tea. She stared out at the small fenced yard where Emma and Ethan were busy making patterns in the fresh snow with their boot prints. Her heart felt heavy and buoyant all at once, a strange contradiction she couldn't quite reconcile. The night before had ended so quietly. She had driven home, tucked the kids into their beds, and then collapsed into bed herself. But sleep refused to come easily, her mind churning. Around 3 a.m, she had finally drifted into a restless slumber, only to wake at dawn to the reality that everything in her life was about to shift. "I told them we'd have a special visitor today," she muttered to herself, recalling the brief conversation she'd had with the twins after breakfast. She had tried to sound casual, as though it might just be an old friend dropping by. But she suspected that Emma, especially, sensed an undertone of seriousness in her mother's voice. In the living room, her phone chimed. A text message. She hurried over, heartbeat accelerating. It was from Jack. "Morning. I hope you and the kids slept well. If it's still all right, I'd like to stop by around noon. Let me know." Ava's hands trembled ever so slightly as she typed a reply. "Noon works. The twins are home. It's winter break from school. See you soon." Just seeing his name illuminated on her screen brought forth a flood of anxiety and a flicker of hope. Would the children be excited? Confused? Angry, perhaps, that a stranger was stepping into their lives, only not really a stranger but their father? Ava sighed, setting the phone aside. There was no point in overthinking every angle. The moment was coming regardless. By 11:45 a.m., Ava had ushered Emma and Ethan inside to warm up. They kicked off their snow-laden boots at the door, giggling about how they'd built a tiny snow fort behind the shed. Ava set them up with a light snack at the kitchen table, peanut butter sandwiches and fruit slices, then rinsed her hands at the sink. "Mom?" Ethan asked, nibbling at the edge of his sandwich. "Is the friend who's coming someone we know?" Ava forced a gentle smile. "You've met him, briefly," she said. "Remember the man at the Christmas party, the one who watched you sing?" She sensed Emma's eyes flicker with recognition. He has something important to talk to you about, to us about." The twins exchanged glances. They looked perplexed but not fearful. Finally, Emma chimed in, "Will he bring his own kids, or is it just him?" Ava's chest tightened. "It's just him, sweetheart." Ethan shrugged, focusing on swirling the last bit of peanut butter on his plate. "Okay." For the next few minutes, they ate in silence, the air charged with anticipation. Ava busied herself by straightening up the living room, though it didn't need it. She glanced at her phone repeatedly, half hoping and half dreading that Jack might text to say he'd canceled. But no such message came. At precisely noon, a soft knock sounded at the front door. Ava's breath caught. The twins froze in the hallway, turning expectantly. She moved toward the door, inhaling deeply before opening it. Jack stood on the porch, shoulders dusted with fine snowflakes. He wore a dark overcoat and a tentative smile, clutching a small bag in one hand. "Hi," he said quietly, stepping into the entryway. He looked around at the cheerful clutter of the modest home, a row of children's boots by the wall, crayon drawings taped to a cupboard, the faint smell of freshly made sandwiches still lingering in the air. It was as far from his sterile penthouse environment as possible, yet there was something deeply comforting about it. "Hi," Ava replied, closing the door behind him. She folded her arms, trying to convey calm. "Thanks for coming." Jack nodded and glanced down the hall. Emma and Ethan stood side by side, curiosity alight in their eyes. He felt a wave of emotion crash over him. He had seen them only once before, singing under stage lights, but now it felt more real, more daunting. The twins stared at him with an openness that put a lump in his throat. Feeling slightly awkward, Jack raised a hand in a small wave. "Hello there," he greeted softly. "Do you remember me from last night?" Ethan nodded. You were the fancy man who liked our singing, he answered with childlike directness. Emma spoke up, tilting her head. Mom said you wanted to talk to us? Ava cleared her throat, stepping forward to gently place a hand on each child's shoulder. This is Jack Linwood, she said, keeping her voice gentle. He's an old friend. And we've both decided it's time you know something important. Ethan blinked. What? Jack glanced at Ava, silently asking if he should proceed. She nodded, so he crouched down until he was almost at eye level with the children. He paused, steadying himself. I'm your father. Those words seemed to echo in the small hallway. Emma's eyes widened, and her gaze darted from Jack to her mother and back again. Ethan's mouth dropped open slightly, forming a silent "oh." For a moment no one spoke. Ava's heart hammered so loudly she was sure it was audible. You two have asked about your dad before, she began, looking at the twins with a mixture of apprehension and tenderness. I always told you it was complicated, but the truth is, we lost contact, and he never knew about you until recently. Jack swallowed, overwhelmed by the sight of his own children processing this life-altering information. He expected confusion, maybe anger, but he wasn't sure if they'd fully grasp it. At 7 years old, how could they? At last, Emma squinted. You're our dad? Really? She asked, almost as if verifying a plot twist from a storybook. Jack forced a reassuring nod. Yes, Emma, I only just found out. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you from the start. Ethan looked wary, stepping a half-foot closer to Ava. Does that mean you live with us now? A ripple of sadness coursed through Jack. Not right now. We're going to figure out how we can spend time together and learn more about each other. I know this must be strange. Maybe I can show you something I brought? He lifted the small bag in his hand. Emma and Ethan exchanged cautious glances. Curiosity inched them forward. Jack reached into the bag and pulled out 2 shiny new harmonicas, each in a small velvet pouch. I heard you both love music, and I thought these might be fun. They're not as fancy as a big piano or anything, but, well, you can learn some carols on these. Maybe we could practice together sometime. Ethan's eyes lit up, though he tried to hide it. Emma's lips parted in a little smile before she frowned, as if unsure she was allowed to be happy about anything Jack offered. Ava stood by, emotional tension tightening her throat. The simple gift, thoughtful but not overwhelming, stirred a warmth inside her. He had clearly tried to pick something meaningful. Tentatively, Ethan reached for one harmonica. We can try them now? He asked, a bit of excitement leaking into his voice. Jack nodded. If you'd like, he said, offering the other to Emma. She took it carefully, turning it over in her hands. It's so shiny, she murmured. Do you know how to play? Not really, Jack admitted with a small chuckle, but I'm willing to learn. Maybe we can all look up some videos or lessons online and figure it out together. Ava watched the exchange, heart swelling. The twins were warming to him in subtle ways. Ethan's posture was less tense, and Emma's eyes lit with that same spark Ava recognized when the little girl discovered a new creative project. Why don't we move to the living room? She suggested gently. We can sit down, maybe let you guys try those out. So they settled in the living room, a cozy space with a worn couch and a tapestry on the wall. Ava perched on the arm of the sofa, while the twins sat cross-legged on the floor, blowing tentative notes on their new harmonicas. Jack eased himself onto an armchair, removing his coat and trying to appear as unintimidating as possible. The first sounds the children produced were squeaky and out of tune. Emma giggled, and Ethan tried a second time, producing a modest melody that was more squeak than note. It's kind of tricky, he said, laughing. Jack cracked a genuine smile. It sounds like we'll need practice. For several minutes, the unusual quartet existed in a bubble of uncertain but genuine warmth. Ava observed Jack's reaction to each squeaky attempt, noticing the pride and wonder in his expression. It struck her that, had circumstances been different, this might have been a memory formed years ago, a father teaching his toddlers to try some musical toy for the first time. Yet there was no going back, only forward. Finally, Emma lowered her harmonica, her voice trembling a little. "Mr. Jack, Dad, this is—" She paused, eyes flickering to see if he'd object to being called Dad. When he didn't, she continued, "Are you going to come a lot? To see us? Mom never had anyone else here that was a dad." Jack's breath caught. I'd like to, if that's okay with you both and your mother. I'll do my best to be here whenever you want." A subtle, cautious smile tugged at Emma's lips. Ethan looked at Ava, as if asking for confirmation. She mustered a small nod, though tears stung her eyes. "We'll figure something out," she said softly, her gaze meeting Jack's. She could see his gratitude and relief. In that moment, it felt like the first steps of a dance, unsteady and fraught with the potential for missteps, yet holding a fragile promise of something beautiful if everyone found the right rhythm. The tensions of the previous night hadn't vanished, nor had the difficulties of bridging 7 years of separation, but in the gentle notes of 2 new harmonicas and the shy hope of 2 children, there was a sense of possibility. Ava, inhaling deeply, thought she could almost hear the unspoken acceptance in the air. The twins didn't fully understand the magnitude of what was unfolding, but they felt no immediate need to reject this man who claimed to be their father. For now, that was enough. Outside, light flakes of snow continued drifting down, coating the street in white. Inside that small living room, they all decided, without saying it, that they would give this new beginning a chance. There would be tough questions in the days ahead, legal complexities, emotional hurdles, but at that point, sitting together on the floor in the flickering hush of a winter afternoon, hope prevailed. And that, Ava realized, was more than she ever thought she'd allow herself to feel. The early afternoon light streamed through Ava's living room window, painting the rug with a warm glow. Emma and Ethan sat at Jack's feet, their new harmonicas shining in their tiny hands. The children giggled as they tested out squeaky notes, while Jack tried, unsuccessfully, to follow along. A gentle camaraderie was forming, tenuous but real. Ava, observing from the couch, felt both relieved and unnerved at how naturally the twins were adapting to Jack's sudden presence. It was as though their innocent hearts sensed that this man, with his uncertain smile and well-tailored coat, truly cared about knowing them. Eventually, after nearly an hour of playful squeals and novice melodies, the harmonicas were set aside. Emma and Ethan retreated to a corner of the living room, conspiring about some game they planned to show Jack. They rummaged in a toy box, whispering to each other. Ava seized the moment and motioned for Jack to join her at the small dining table adjacent to the open kitchen. She spoke softly to keep the children from overhearing. "I want to talk about how we're going to proceed," she said, folding her hands on the table. "They're excited, in their own careful way, but they don't grasp the bigger picture." Jack leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. "I understand. I feel as though we're stepping onto thin ice." He exhaled slowly. "You've been raising them on your own. You have a rhythm and a life. I'm the outsider who's just discovered I belong here somehow." Ava studied him. The tension in his jaw was clear, as was the guilt in his eyes. "I don't see you as an outsider," she murmured. "But it's true. We have a certain routine, and the kids aren't used to a father. We can't just swap normalcy for whatever this is." He nodded. "Agreed. Let's think carefully. Perhaps I can visit regularly, so the children become familiar with me in a gentle way. Then, maybe in time, they'll want to see my home, learn about my world. Only if you're comfortable, of course." Ava's lips curved in a wry half-smile. "Your world is enormous, and so different from ours. But yes, that might work. We can do small visits, like a meal or an outing, maybe once a week at first. You can come here sometimes, Or we meet in a neutral place, a park or a museum. Something low-key. Jack reached out, brushing his fingertips against the rim of Ava's mug. He stopped short of touching her hand, but his voice turned gentle. Thank you for letting me do this. I promise I won't rush them. Or you. I'll be patient. Ava felt the warmth rising to her cheeks. She recalled how he had once been charming yet distant, someone who never had to ask for permission or wait. Now, he seemed almost vulnerable, treading carefully so as not to lose this fragile chance. I guess we'll have to figure it out together, she said quietly. Before they could continue, Emma tugged on Jack's sleeve. Look, Dad, she said with an excited quiver in her voice, we found this old board game. You can play if you want. Her eyes darted to Ava as if silently asking if it was okay to call him Dad. Ava nodded, offering an encouraging smile. Jack swallowed hard, moved by the simple word, Dad. He rose from the chair and followed Emma and Ethan to the coffee table. The board was battered and missing its lid, an old puzzle game that required matching shapes and colors. Ava hovered nearby. She noticed how, in the children's presence, Jack's corporate polish softened. He laughed when the kids teased him about not understanding the rules, teased them back when they messed up a turn. A comfort started to settle in, as if they'd stumbled into a normal family scene. Mom, come join, Ethan called out, patting the spot next to Jack. Ava hesitated. She hadn't played this game in ages, but she also saw the invitation in Jack's gaze. Softly, she slid onto the floor, forming a circle with her children and the man she'd once never imagined seeing again. They played for nearly half an hour. Emma assembled the colored pieces with a meticulous flair, while Ethan tried a more chaotic approach, giggling if he mismatched. Jack struggled to keep up, and the twins erupted in comedic indignation whenever he made a blunder. Ava found herself surprised at her own laughter, resonating in the house as if echoing a future she hadn't dared envision. Eventually, the game ended in a tie, a generous scoring by the children. The room brimmed with contentment, though Ava could sense it was precarious, too new to be fully trusted. Jack glanced at the clock on the wall and cleared his throat. I should probably go soon, he announced. I don't want to overstay or overwhelm you, but can we set up another time, maybe next weekend? He directed the question at both Ava and the children, careful to include everyone. Yes, Ethan burst out, quickly glancing at Ava to confirm. She nodded. Sure, next weekend. We can talk more and figure out a plan. Emma smiled shyly. Will you bring your harmonica so we can practice? She asked, fiddling with the small instrument in her hands. Jack returned her smile, gratitude shining through. Absolutely. I might even look up some tips online so I don't embarrass myself. They all shared a soft laugh. Then Ava collected the board game pieces and set them back in the toy box while Jack carefully put on his coat. The children insisted on walking him to the door, each hugging him a bit awkwardly. Jack, his eyes misty, ruffled their hair. I'll see you soon, he whispered, pressing a quick kiss to Emma's head when she leaned in. At the threshold, Ava and Jack exchanged a look, an entire unspoken conversation passing in the space of a heartbeat. She opened the door, letting the cold winter air swirl in. Snow was still falling lightly, dusting the front stoop. Drive safe, she said softly. He nodded, stepping outside. Thank you, he managed, glancing over his shoulder at the children one last time. All of you. As the door closed, Ava locked it gently, leaning her forehead against the wood. A swirl of complicated feelings coursed through her. Relief that the meeting had gone well, apprehension about the next steps. A strange longing for something she couldn't quite name. Inside the living room, Emma and Ethan were already chattering excitedly about how they would show Dad their next art projects. She heard them giggling, full of wonder at the day's revelations. Jack returned to his sleek luxury sedan parked at the curb, brushing a layer of snow off the windshield. Sliding into the driver's seat, he gripped the steering wheel but didn't start the engine right away. Instead, he just sat there, exhaling heavily. The quiet suburban street stretched around him, a world away from the hectic swirl of skyscrapers and corporate offices that usually defined his life. He thought of Emma's bright, inquisitive stare and Ethan's gentle sense of humor. A pang of regret tightened his chest. 7 years' worth of moments he had missed. First words, first steps, birthdays, bedtime stories. Yet a fragile hope accompanied that regret. They had accepted him with a surprising ease, especially for children so used to living without a father. He vowed he wouldn't let them down now. Finally, Jack started the car and headed back toward the city's main avenues. As the skyline reappeared, he knew that the rest of his life was about to be renegotiated. His schedule, his personal decisions, possibly even his living arrangements if things progressed. But as daunting as it was, the thought filled him with a resolute determination. There was no corporate victory that could match the feeling of connecting with his children. Over the following days, Ava found herself checking her phone more often. She woke up each morning to see if Jack had sent a text, and indeed he was consistent. He messaged short updates, like how he'd watched a tutorial on harmonica basics, or glimpses of his day at the office, or even snapshots of a piece of artwork he'd found that reminded him of Emma's sketches. The messages felt casual on the surface, but she sensed the undercurrent. Jack was trying to build a bridge into their everyday life. When the kids asked about him, Ava answered with cautious optimism. "He's busy with work, but he wants to see you soon." She saw the flicker of anticipation in their eyes. It amazed her that even without a father for so long, children's hearts could open so quickly. She wondered if that was a blessing or a dangerous vulnerability. One chilly afternoon, while the twins were at a neighbor's house for a playdate, Jack called Ava directly. She stepped onto her back porch for privacy. Her breath formed wisps in the frigid air. "Hi," she said. "Everything all right?" "Yeah," he replied, the warmth in his voice making her grip the phone tighter. "I just wanted to confirm that we're on for the weekend. The weather forecast looks iffy, but if it's just light snow, I'd still love to do something. Maybe an indoor activity if the park is too cold. There's a children's museum they might enjoy." Ava considered it. "That's a good idea," she agreed. "Emma's quite the art lover, and Ethan loves anything interactive. A museum with hands-on exhibits would be perfect." She heard relief on Jack's end. "Great, I'll pick up tickets. And, I know you prefer to keep things low-key, but is it okay if I arrange a private tour? It's not about making a splash. I just don't want them to be overwhelmed by crowds, and I can call in a favor so we don't have to wait in lines." Ava felt a small pang. She was used to everyday experiences, waiting in line, public spaces, blending in, but maybe a private arrangement would ease the kids into this new world. "Sure," she said softly, "but let's keep it as normal as possible. I don't want them thinking they'll always get special treatment." "Understood," Jack replied earnestly. "We'll keep it modest." They hung up soon after, and Ava lingered on the porch, wind biting her cheeks. She wrapped her arms around herself, processing the swirl of emotions. For so long she had prided herself on independence, on single-handedly raising her children. Now she had to let Jack share that role. It was a leap of faith, and she wasn't sure how the future would play out. Saturday arrived, bringing with it a crisp wind and the promise of more snow. Jack's driver, a polite man named Harold, pulled up to Ava's house at 10 in the morning. This time Ava had decided to let the kids ride in Jack's car together, while she followed in her own vehicle. The arrangement felt safer somehow, giving her some sense of control if any meltdown or confusion occurred. But to her surprise, the children bounded into the back seat of the luxury sedan with minimal hesitation, excited for the day's outing. Jack helped them with their seatbelts, smiling at Ava through the window. "I'll see you at the museum then?" She nodded. "I'll be right behind you." The short caravan drove across town, weaving through half-frozen streets until they reached the children's exploratorium, a bright, modern building with wide glass doors. Jack hopped out first, directing Harold where to park, while Ava pulled into a visitor space. She watched as Emma and Ethan danced around Jack, pointing at the museum's colorful banners. He seemed to respond with genuine delight, stooping to read a sign with them, gesturing at the whimsical statues in the lobby. By the time she joined them at the entrance, her children's laughter echoed in the open foyer. The museum staff recognized Jack immediately. He was a major donor, it turned out, and discreetly greeted him, ushering the group toward a quieter side entrance. Ava found the attention slightly unsettling, but she appreciated that they were spared the longer public line. Inside, exhibits sprawled across multiple floors: science demonstrations, craft areas, interactive light displays. Emma raced to a corner filled with painting easels, while Ethan tugged Jack toward a giant wind tunnel machine. Ava trailed behind, feeling a surreal sense of comfort. Jack was fully engaged, helping the twins understand each interactive station, praising their curiosity. She noticed passers-by occasionally did double takes at Jack's profile. Some recognized him from business articles or philanthropic events, but the staff's careful guidance kept them from being swarmed. Ava glimpsed a few lingering glances, but no one approached for autographs or photos, which was a relief. She appreciated how discreetly the museum employees handled their presence. At one point, Jack was kneeling beside Ethan, who was spinning a massive gear to power a miniature train. "Look at it go!" Jack marveled as the train started chugging along the track. Ethan squealed, glancing back at Ava with pride. Meanwhile, Emma had discovered a station where children could build small catapults, launching foam balls into targets. Ava stood behind her daughter, helping align the wooden pieces. Their explorations continued for hours. They broke for lunch at the museum cafe, picking simple sandwiches and hot chocolate. Emma perched next to Jack, peppering him with questions about his work. "Do you really have like 100 offices and thousands of employees?" she asked, wide-eyed. Jack chuckled. "Not personally, but my company has offices in various cities. Yes, quite a few employees. It's a big operation. But we also have smaller teams working on special projects, kind of like the exhibits you see here. Lots of collaboration." Ethan took a sip of his hot chocolate. "Do you ever let kids visit your office to learn about your projects?" Jack paused. "Well, not usually, but maybe I can make an exception for you two. If your mom is okay with it, I want you to see what I do, in case you're curious." Ava watched the exchange, noting how easily the children gravitated to Jack's stories. At the same time, a mild unease tightened in her chest. She wanted to shield them from too much corporate scrutiny or high society exposure, yet she had promised Jack a chance to bond with them, so she tamped down her worries. When they finished eating, the children ran off to find the next attraction. Ava and Jack, lagging behind, shared a quiet look. "They're having a great time," Ava said softly. "Thank you for arranging this." Jack's expression was tinged with relief. "I'm just happy they seem comfortable. I was afraid they might resent me. But they're so open." Ava shrugged, a bittersweet smile on her lips. "Kids can be incredibly forgiving. They live in the now. It's the grown-ups who carry scars." She noticed a flicker of regret in his gaze. "Don't push yourself too hard. Just keep connecting like this." He nodded, and they continued after the twins, finding them enthralled by a music-themed exhibit. Emma managed to compose a short digital jingle on a large touchscreen piano, while Ethan tried an electronic drum set. Ava snapped a few photos on her phone, capturing the joy on the children's faces. Now and then, she even caught Jack in the frame, looking proud, almost childlike in his own excitement. By mid-afternoon, the kids began yawning, their energy waning. The group made one final pass through the gift shop, where Jack allowed them each a small souvenir, but only after Ava insisted they avoid anything too extravagant. Emma chose a mini coloring book. Ethan picked out a small puzzle kit. "Thank you, Dad," Emma said, surprising everyone with how naturally she used that term now. Jack's throat tightened. "You're welcome, sweetheart. I love seeing you smile." On the ride home, the children dozed off in the back of Jack's car while Ava followed behind once again. A light snow was starting up, flurrying across the highways. The day felt almost dreamlike. Once at Ava's house, Jack carried a sleepy Emma to the front door, carefully setting her down when she stirred. Ethan, yawning, shuffled in right behind them. Inside, the children perked up just enough to wave a quick goodbye. "See you soon?" Ethan asked, half-lidded eyes betraying how exhausted he was. Jack pressed a hand gently to the boy's shoulder. "Absolutely," he replied. Emma gave him a drowsy hug, then trudged down the hall to her room. Ava walked Jack back to the front door. "They had a wonderful time," she said quietly. "I've never seen them so engaged at that museum." His relief was palpable. "I'm so glad. Maybe next weekend." She lifted a hand, halting him gently. "Let's talk in a couple days to figure out schedules. They'll be back in school soon and we'll have to juggle things. But yes, let's continue. They clearly want to see you again." A small, grateful smile touched Jack's lips. "Sounds good. Drive safe, Ava. And thanks for trusting me." She offered a nod, a complex swirl of emotions dancing in her eyes. "Good night, Jack." He stepped into the dusk, pulling the door closed behind him. Through the window, Ava watched his figure retreat to the car, snow swirling around him. As he drove away, a quiet hope blossomed in her heart, tempered by the knowledge that life was rarely this simple. Still, as she turned off the living room light and began ushering her tired children to bed, she clung to the day's warmth. Maybe, just maybe, they were forging a new path, one that could weave together the life she built on her own with this new future that included a father for her twins. The thought both thrilled and terrified her, but she knew there was no going back. Together, for better or worse, they would learn how to become a family. Over the following week, Ava's house settled back into its familiar routine, punctuated by the gentle chaos that twins naturally bring. Early morning scuffles over who got the last piece of toast, coloring books strewn across the kitchen table, impromptu singing from Emma in the bathtub. Yet now, there was a noticeable new thread woven into their daily life, the constant anticipation of Jack's next visit or phone call. He texted regularly, asking for updates on what Emma and Ethan were up to, whether they were practicing their harmonicas or if Ethan had managed to finish that puzzle kit from the museum's gift shop. The twins would often dictate enthusiastic replies, telling him about their day at school, the funny joke a classmate made, or the new art project Emma was working on. Ava would type their words verbatim, sometimes snapping a quick photo of the children mid-activity to send along. She marveled at how easily they adapted to having this dad figure checking in, as though they'd been expecting him to appear all along. In truth, Ava was the one most thrown off by the shift. Her nights were filled with restless thoughts. She'd replay scenes of Jack laughing with the kids at the museum, or the gentle way he'd carried Emma when she was too sleepy to walk. She found herself analyzing every detail, wondering if her trust was too hastily given. Yet she couldn't deny the lightness in her heart each time she saw Emma or Ethan radiate joy at hearing from him. It was a delicate balance, one that left her both comforted and on edge. Then came Saturday afternoon, when Jack was due to visit for a casual lunch at Ava's home. It was to be the first time he'd spend extended hours in their personal space since the initial introduction. Ava took a quiet inventory of the kitchen. A simple meal of homemade pizza and salad was planned, with fruit cups for dessert. She also glanced around the living room, suddenly hyper-aware of the worn couch cushions, the hand-me-down furniture, the slightly stained rug from an incident involving orange juice and crayons years ago. It all seemed so modest compared to Jack's world of polished glass and fine leather. When she finally opened the door at noon, Jack stood there holding a small bouquet of white tulips, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. "Hi," he said, stepping inside the narrow hallway. "I, brought these. I didn't want to come empty-handed." Ava blinked, her breath catching at the unexpected gesture. "That's really sweet." She took the flowers, cheeks warming. She noticed a pang of self-consciousness. Where would she find a vase nice enough? She ended up grabbing a tall glass from the cupboard, filling it with water. Tulips bobbed a little, brightening the space as she set them on the dining table. Meanwhile, the children rushed forward, each vying for Jack's attention. "Dad! Dad!" Emma held up a notebook full of scribbled lyrics for a little song she was inventing. "I'm trying to write music, but I don't know how to make the notes yet. Can you help me look it up on the computer?" Ethan pulled on Jack's other sleeve. "I finished my puzzle. It's a dinosaur scene. Mom took a picture. Want to see it in real life?" Jack let out an amused chuckle, crouching to meet them at eye level. "Sure thing. Show me everything," he said, ruffling Ethan's hair with one hand and gently patting Emma's shoulder with the other. "Then we can help your mom set the table for lunch, okay?" Ava felt a flutter in her chest. The way he said, "We can help your mom," startled her a bit, though not unpleasantly. It sounded domestic. She busied herself in the kitchen, glancing over occasionally as Jack followed the twins to the living room. She observed him listening intently as Emma explained her homemade lyrics, then bending down to admire Ethan's puzzle masterpiece spread across the coffee table. The children beamed with pride. After a few minutes, Ava called everyone to the table. She'd laid out plates, napkins, and the freshly baked pizzas, 1 cheese, 1 pepperoni. The twins scrambled into their seats, Jack taking the chair opposite Ava. As they began eating, Ethan launched into a funny story about school, something involving a class pet hamster escaping its cage. The anecdote ended with Emma chiming in that they'd all scrambled under desks to catch it. Jack laughed easily, taking another slice of pizza. "I remember when I was a kid we had a class rabbit that we were supposed to take turns feeding. One day it chewed through its entire cardboard enclosure, and the teacher spent hours trying to coax it out from under a cabinet." Ethan's eyes widened. "You did that too?" he exclaimed, as if discovering a direct link to his father's childhood formed a deeper bond. Ava smiled behind her glass of water. She'd never really considered what Jack might have been like as a child, and it was oddly endearing to think of him crawling around a classroom floor after a rabbit. The conversation drifted from animals to holiday memories, then to harmless jokes about what Emma and Ethan might get up to during winter break. Ava was struck by how natural it felt. 4 people talking over a meal as families do. When the kids dashed back to the living room to grab their harmonicas for a quick post-lunch serenade, Ava began clearing plates. Jack got up to help, scooping up leftover crusts and salad bowls. It took her aback. She was used to doing it all herself, or maybe having the twins half-heartedly assist. "You don't have to," she protested softly as he followed her into the kitchen. Jack offered a small shrug. "I want to. Besides, you've fed me. It's the least I can do." They stood at the sink, side by side, rinsing and stacking plates. A comfortable quiet settled for a moment. Ava found herself acutely aware of his physical presence. His warm shoulder brushing hers, the subtle cologne he wore, the steady way he breathed. It was an intimacy that felt both foreign and strangely comforting. "You're good at this," she remarked, her attempt at teasing. "I thought corporate moguls never wash dishes." He laughed under his breath. "Believe it or not, I did my share of chores growing up. My parents insisted I learn how to handle basic tasks. I guess I wasn't always a suit and tie guy." She handed him a damp dish for him to dry. "I like this side of you," she said quietly, immediately wondering if she was overstepping. But the words seemed to slip out on their own. He paused, looking at her with an unreadable expression. "I like being here," he said, voice equally soft. "With you, with the kids. It's different from what I'm used to. Less formal, more real. I missed so much." Ava felt a tug in her chest at the raw sincerity of his words. She swallowed. We can't rewrite the past, Jack, but we can figure out this present, right? He nodded, a note of gratitude in his eyes. Yes, absolutely. Their exchange was cut short by Emma's voice from the living room, calling them to come listen to the new duet she and Ethan had devised on the harmonicas. Jack shook off his thoughtful expression and gave Ava a wry grin. Duty calls, he joked. For another hour, the family practiced squeaky songs, culminating in a cacophonous version of Jingle Bells that had everyone in stitches. Then, mindful of how quickly the afternoon had passed, Jack announced he should be heading out soon. There were some pressing work emails he had to address. Emma and Ethan complained in a good-natured way, pleading for just 5 more minutes. But eventually they conceded, hugging him goodbye at the threshold. Once again, Ava walked him to the front door. Soft sunlight from the window caught the slight hint of gold in Jack's hair. He lingered, his hand resting lightly on the doorknob. "Thank you for inviting me," he murmured. "For letting me into your space." She tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "It's the kids' home, too. They want you to see it, be part of it. So do I." A flicker of emotion passed over his features. "I'll call you soon," he promised. "We can plan our next outing or whatever you think is best. I'm free next weekend, maybe. Or if there's a school event." "There's a winter recital coming up at their school," Ava cut in, recalling a note she'd received from the music teacher. "Emma's class is singing and Ethan's helping with stage props. It's nothing huge, but if you'd like to come..." Jack's eyes lit up. "Absolutely, I'll be there. Just tell me when and where." She nodded, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "I'll text you the details." They stood there for a moment, neither quite willing to break the fragile closeness that had settled. Finally, Jack spoke again, voice gentle. "You know, the first time I saw them singing at my Christmas gala, I felt something I couldn't explain, like a magnet. Now, every time I'm here, it makes sense. They're part of me. And so are you." Ava's throat tightened. For a second, she thought he might lean in, brush a quick kiss to her cheek. But he didn't, maybe unsure how she'd react. She wasn't sure herself. Instead, he quietly opened the door and stepped outside, sending her one last, longing look. She watched him go, heart fluttering. The wind picked up, sending a swirl of crisp air through the doorway. Closing it softly, Ava leaned her back against the wood. She could hear the kids in the living room, already chattering about the next time they'd see him. It was remarkable how seamlessly they had accepted Jack's role, though Ava reminded herself that children craved connection, especially when it felt genuine. She simply prayed their trust wouldn't be broken. That night, after the twins had gone to bed, Ava found herself curled on the couch, scrolling absently through her phone. She looked at the photos of that day's lunch. Emma gleefully biting into pizza, Ethan grinning with a mouth smudged by tomato sauce, Jack stooping to tie Ethan's shoelace. Each captured moment made her chest both tight and buoyant at once. A message came through on her phone, lighting up the screen. "Jack. Did they like the day? I hope I wasn't too intrusive. I keep worrying I'll overwhelm them." She smiled sadly, typing a reply. "They had a blast. You're doing fine, Jack. They already can't wait to see you again." There was a pause, then another message. "Thank you, Ava. I mean it. Good night." A warm flush spread in her cheeks. She thought of how differently this all could have gone. Anger, resentment, legal battles. But so far, each step had been cautious, caring, hopeful. It felt almost too good to be true. Ava had heard the horror stories from single parents about absent fathers returning too late, or parental disputes that tore families apart. Yet here she was, forging an uncharted path with a billionaire CEO father who seemed determined to build a real connection. Hugging a throw pillow, Ava stared at the tulips on her dining table. Their stems had slightly drooped, petals still soft and elegant. She wondered if it was possible to let go of her fear, and accept that she had help now, a partner in parenting, even if not a traditional partner in romance. And a small part of her wondered if that might change too, if perhaps one day they could be more than just co-parents. The thought made her heart race. With a final sigh, she locked her phone and stood, heading to her bedroom. Tomorrow would bring a new day of challenges and joys, prepping the twins for school, juggling her photography gigs, and maybe more texts from Jack. As she turned out the lights, Ava allowed herself a tiny smile, cherishing the hope that maybe this fragile alignment of their lives could lead to something lasting. Yes, they had a long road ahead, past wounds and future uncertainties. But for the first time since Emma and Ethan were born, Ava felt she wasn't carrying that road alone. Snow fell steadily outside the school building, creating a gentle hush over the parking lot. Parents hurried in and out, clutching coats and holding the hands of excited children. Through the large glass doors, Ava could glimpse holiday decorations on every wall, paper snowflakes, tinsel, and glittering stars. A dozen bright posters advertised the winter recital scheduled for that evening, heralding a night of music and cheer. Emma and Ethan stood by Ava, both a bundle of nerves and excitement. Emma clutched a small folder of sheet music, even though she had practiced her part so many times that she knew it by heart. Ethan had a paint smudge on his cheek. He was part of the stage crew team and had just finished helping decorate the makeshift backdrop. Ava dabbed at his cheek with a tissue, smiling at his slightly sheepish grin. "Mom?" Emma ventured, peering anxiously down the hall. "Did you tell Dad the recital's at 6? You said he was coming, right?" Ava felt a flicker of warmth at the easy way Emma now referred to Jack as Dad. In the weeks since the museum visit and the lunch they'd had together, the twins had grown increasingly comfortable calling him by that word, savoring the normalcy it implied. "He knows," Ava assured her, gently smoothing Emma's hair. "He said he'd be here early." At that exact moment, the school door opened, letting in a brisk gust of wind. Jack Linwood stepped inside, glancing around the corridor with keen eyes. He was dressed in a dark wool coat, a scarf loosely around his neck, looking both professional and slightly out of place amid the swirl of energetic children. The minute he spotted Ava and the twins, his expression brightened. He raised a hand in a casual wave. "Dad!" Ethan called, running forward. Emma followed suit, beaming. Ava found herself smiling as well. Jack looked thoroughly relieved to see them, though she caught the hint of anxiety in his eyes as a few nearby parents recognized him. A mother in a puffy jacket gave him a second glance, clearly trying to place why he seemed so familiar. Ava leaned in. "Don't worry," she said in a low tone. "Most people here won't fuss. They're busy enough with their own kids." Jack nodded, easing. "Right, thanks." Then he turned his attention to Emma, who was showing him her music sheet. "You ready for the big performance?" She bit her lip, half thrilled, half terrified. "Yes, but my stomach feels funny. It's a big crowd." He knelt, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Hey, you were amazing at the Christmas gala, remember? Tonight, it's just your friends, parents, teachers. You'll do great. I'm so proud of you already." Emma flushed happily. Ethan tugged on Jack's sleeve. "I'm helping backstage with the props. You have to look at the snowman cutout we made. It's huge." Ava watched the three of them interact, her heart warmed by the genuine bond blossoming between father and children. It still startled her sometimes to see how smoothly Jack had stepped into their lives, but she was grateful each day for how he worked to maintain that connection. Yes, their arrangement was delicate. Yes, she still had fears about what would happen if Jack's corporate world intruded too heavily. But at least for now, it felt right. "Let's go find our seats," Ava suggested, guiding them down the hall toward the school auditorium. She reminded the twins when and where they needed to be for final rehearsals, then pointed out a cluster of chairs near the front she'd saved. Jack nodded, following her lead. Inside, The auditorium was abuzz with parents juggling coats and cameras, teachers quietly directing children on stage, and the school principal pacing near the back, ticking off last-minute details. Festive decorations draped the ceiling, garlands, paper lanterns, and snowflake cutouts hung in neat rows. A wave of nostalgia washed over Ava, remembering her own elementary school performances, the butterflies in her stomach, the bright stage lights. She brushed off the memory and focused on the present, on Emma, who was slipping away to join her classmates, and on Ethan, who headed to the wings to ensure the backdrop was ready. Jack and Ava found their spots in the first row, amidst the bustling crowd. While waiting for the show to begin, he turned to her, voice low. "Thank you for saving me a seat, and for letting me be here. I missed so much already. I'm grateful every time I get to see them do these milestones." Ava's gaze lingered on his earnest expression. "They want you here," she replied. "So do I." He gave a small, relieved smile and was about to respond when the overhead lights flickered, signaling the performance was about to start. Children's voices hushed into whispers. Parents shuffled into their seats, and the principal took the microphone on stage to welcome everyone. A hush fell, broken only by the occasional squeak of a folding chair. The first act was a small group of kindergartners singing an off-key holiday medley which drew a collective awe from the audience. Jack's smile widened and Ava noticed he was secretly filming on his phone, amused by the tiny performers. The next act featured second graders reciting a cheerful winter poem. Then came Emma's class, the third act. The curtains parted to reveal a line of children in matching white tops, each holding a small bell. As the pianist in the corner struck the opening chord, Emma straightened her posture, scanning the audience until she locked eyes with Ava and, notably, with Jack. She looked a bit nervous, her knuckles tight around the handle of her bell. But at the first line of the song, her voice joined the chorus, and the tension seemed to melt away. "They sound so good," Jack whispered, leaning closer to Ava. "She's right in the front row." Ava nodded, her chest tightening with pride. She recognized Emma's sweet soprano drifting above the group, a testament to how diligently her daughter had rehearsed. For 3 minutes, the auditorium glowed with their carol, a soft, lilting melody that invoked imagery of snow, love, and holiday magic. When it ended, rousing applause filled the space. Emma beamed. She glanced at the audience once more, found Jack and Ava clapping wholeheartedly, and her entire face brightened. The children took a small bow before exiting stage left. Ava's heart felt near to bursting. She squeezed Jack's arm without thinking. He gave her hand a gentle pat in return, that simple exchange radiating a quiet sense of unity. Next, there was a comedic skit by the fourth graders. Ava spotted Ethan darting around behind the curtains, adjusting cardboard props and hauling a large snowman figure on stage at precisely the right moment. A ripple of laughter came from the crowd at the sight of the giant smiling snowman, and Ava caught Ethan giving a thumbs up from the wings. Jack chuckled softly, equally proud of his son's behind-the-scenes work. After the final act, a combined choir featuring several grades, the principal returned to the microphone, commending the students for their hard work and creativity. The show ended to thunderous applause, camera flashes, and the bustle of parents rushing to find their children. Ava and Jack hung back for a moment, letting the initial wave clear. She could sense Jack's desire to run backstage and congratulate Emma and Ethan immediately, but she placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let them finish up. The teachers will release them in a minute," she murmured, familiar with the school's system. Sure enough, a teacher soon stepped forward, announcing that children would be dismissed one class at a time. Within moments, Emma emerged from the side door, practically vibrating with excitement. Jack knelt, opening his arms. She ran to him, bell still in hand, cheeks flushed. "Dad, did you hear me singing? Did it sound okay?" "You were amazing," he replied, voice thick with emotion. "Seriously, so good. You looked so confident." She giggled, ducking her head. "I was nervous at first, but then I saw you guys and—" She shrugged, happy tears glistening in her eyes. Ava leaned down, embracing both of them. Ethan trotted over, beaming. "Did you see the snowman? I helped paint that." He pointed to a corner of the stage where the large cardboard snowman remained. "I thought it might collapse if I didn't hold the rope right." Ava patted his back. "We saw it. The audience loved the whole skit. You nailed your cues." Jack ruffled Ethan's hair. "Nice work, buddy. Very impressive." The children chattered over each other, adrenaline from the performance still buzzing in their veins. Ava noted how comfortable they seemed, relating everything to Jack as naturally as if he'd been present for all their prior school events. The realization both warmed her heart and pinged it with regret at lost time. Still, tonight's success felt like a balm, proof that they could make up for some of it if they kept going. Shortly, the family made their way out of the auditorium. Ava insisted on taking a few photos in the hallway. Emma posed with her bell, and Ethan proudly displayed the paint on his hands. Jack joined in for a snapshot, and Ava used her phone to capture it, father and children grinning, the school hallway behind them. Then Emma demanded Ava appear in a photo too, so Jack took her phone, carefully framing mother and children for a keepsake. "Send that to me," Jack urged gently, glancing at the screen. "I want to remember this." Ava nodded, swallowing around a sudden lump. "I will." Outside, the snow fell thicker now, covering cars and turning the lampposts into glowing beacons. They huddled near the entrance, discussing the next step. "How about I treat us to hot chocolate somewhere?" Jack offered, eager to extend the evening. He looked at Ava for permission, cognizant that the children had bedtime routines and school in the morning. The kids both squealed, "Yes." But Ava hesitated, checking the time on her phone. "All right," she said eventually, won over by their excitement. "But just a quick stop. We have homework checks tonight." Emma and Ethan shrugged off their backpacks to lighten themselves for the upcoming treat. Jack managed to charm his driver into finding a family-friendly cafe near the school, and soon they piled into two separate vehicles, Jack with the kids, Ava following in her own car, as had become their standard arrangement to maintain flexibility. The cafe they chose was a cozy corner spot with warm lighting and a cheerful chalkboard menu. The air smelled of pastries and sweet cocoa. The kids fidgeted in line, unable to pick between a peppermint hot chocolate or a marshmallow-topped one. Jack, growing more adept in navigating these childlike dilemmas, simply ordered one of each flavor and suggested they share to taste test. Ava rolled her eyes with amused exasperation. They settled at a snug table by a window fogged with condensation. Outside, passing headlights cut through the snowfall. Inside, soft chatter of other patrons filled the air. Emma sipped her cocoa, leaning against Ava, while Ethan painstakingly counted how many mini marshmallows were in his cup. Jack sat opposite them, resting his elbows on the table, watching with an expression so tender that Ava's stomach flipped. "This is nice," he commented softly, voice subdued so only Ava could hear. "I never thought my life would include a moment like this, sitting in a random cafe with kids of my own." Ava's gaze softened. "You've been taking to it well. I'm still surprised how easily Emma and Ethan have let you in." His eyes shifted to the children, then returned to her. "They're remarkable, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be worthy of that trust." A comfortable silence settled. They all savored the hot drinks, listened to the kids bicker lightly over who had more whipped cream, chuckled when Emma accidentally got chocolate on her nose. Time seemed to stretch in a gentle bubble, cocooning them from the pressures of the outside world. Eventually, though, Ava checked the clock, mindful of the kids' bedtime. They finished up, cleared their cups, and stepped into the swirling snow once more. In the parking lot, they lingered near Jack's car. Emma gave him a long hug, thanking him for coming. Ethan hopped in place, half chilled by the cold, but he too grinned widely. Jack stroked their heads. "Any time," he said. "I'll be there at your next recital, your next performance. Count on it." With that, Ava gently ushered the children to her own car while Jack climbed into his sedan. Before she shut her door, Ava saw him roll down the window, catching her attention. "Hey," he called over, his breath visible in the frosty air. "Let me know when you get home safe." She nodded, smiling faintly. "Will do." They drove off in separate directions, Jack back to his upscale city penthouse, Ava toward their cozy suburban home. But in her rearview mirror, she watched his car following for a portion of the route, the headlights occasionally merging into a line of traffic, then reappearing. A sense of longing flitted through her. She shook it off, focusing on the road. Once home, she helped the kids out of the car, their chatter a steady babble of how fun the night had been. She hurried them into pajamas, supervised toothbrushing, and finally tucked them into bed. Emma snuggled her stuffed cat while Ethan was still excitedly recounting details of the backstage tasks. Ava kissed their foreheads, dimmed the lights, and left them whispering conspiratorially to each other in the soft glow of their nightlight. In her own room, Ava changed into a sweatshirt and leggings, then settled on the edge of her bed with her phone. A text from Jack already waited. "Did you get home safely? How are E&E doing?" She typed a quick reply. "Yes, home safe. They're in bed, still giddy about tonight. Thanks again for everything. They loved having you there." Jack's response was immediate. "I loved it too. Tell them sweet dreams for me." Ava set the phone aside, heart fluttering in that now familiar way. She drew in a deep breath, letting the warmth of the evening wash over her. It wasn't just a single event anymore. Jack had become part of their weekly rhythm. Emma and Ethan saw him as a steadfast figure, and he consistently showed up, which reassured Ava that his commitment wasn't a short-lived phase. Of course, doubt still lingered in her mind. She worried about his high-profile world, about the inevitable moment the media or corporate demands might collide with their serene little bubble. But each time she braced for that conflict, Jack managed to navigate around it, scheduling visits without fanfare, remaining present in the kids' lives without turning them into a PR spectacle. Ava lay back on her pillows, still in her sweatshirt, imagining how the future might unfold. A father-daughter dance at school, father-son sporting events, maybe even a family vacation one day. The possibilities made her head spin. Yet for all the apprehension, she sensed that tonight's recital was a milestone, a first big public event the kids shared with their father, a memory that would shape their story. Yes, the snow fell outside, blanketing everything in cold silence. But in Ava's home, warmth glowed in every corner, the echo of applause in the auditorium, the taste of hot chocolate shared by 4 people forging a family. She closed her eyes and whispered a silent thanks for the music, the laughter, and the hope that love could indeed stitch together what once felt broken. The weekend dawned bright and crisp, with the city still hushed under a blanket of fresh snow. From the window of his penthouse apartment, Jack Linwood observed the glassy skyline. The usual clamor of horns and sirens felt distant, replaced by the soft hiss of winter's chill. He sipped his coffee, mind wandering to the evening's plan. Ava had invited him and the twins on a simple outing, an afternoon sledding session at a nearby park. He wondered at how, in just a few short months, his weekends had shifted from business brunches and investor meetings to children's recitals, cozy lunches, and now sledding in a public park. He felt a twinge of nervous anticipation. He hadn't gone sledding since college, and that had been more of a fleeting whim than a genuine bonding experience. But the thought of sharing this new tradition with Emma and Ethan made his heart surge with a warmth he couldn't quite name. Careful not to spill, he set his coffee cup on the marble countertop. Then he checked his phone. No new messages from Ava yet, so presumably the plan remained unchanged. Meet at noon, with the kids bringing their tiny plastic sleds. He flicked through a mental list of tasks. He'd already had his assistant block out the day, so no urgent calls could interrupt. He'd arranged for casual winter gear, no expensive suits here, just a down jacket, knit cap, and snow boots. It struck him how all these small details had become rituals in creating a space where he could be simply a father. Meanwhile, at her modest suburban home, Ava was weaving through a flurry of preparations. Emma and Ethan were bursting with enthusiasm, scrambling to find mismatched mittens, puffy coats, and thick scarves. Their chatter crackled through the living room as they double-checked each other's gear. "Ethan, your boots are on the wrong feet," Emma giggled, pointing. Sure enough, the boy frowned, flipping them to the correct orientation. "Well, hurry," Ava encouraged, a laugh in her voice. "Dad's meeting us there soon." She always felt a small pang when she used the term Dad for Jack, less a pang of regret and more a pang of marvel. How quickly her children had adapted to his presence in their lives, how naturally that word now flowed. She was still letting herself trust that he wouldn't vanish, wouldn't break their trust. So far, he had proven reliable, consistent, caring, and the children beamed whenever they saw him or got a message from him. When everyone was finally bundled up against the cold, Ava grabbed a thermos of hot cocoa, piling into her car with Emma and Ethan in the back seat. There was a chorus of excitement as she started the engine. The drive to the park took about 15 minutes, winding through streets lined with bare trees and snow-topped roofs. The sky was a luminous blue, the sun bouncing off white drifts in a way that made everything glisten. They arrived at the park, spotting a wide slope behind the playground, perfect for sledding. Families were scattered around, kids sliding down the hill squealing with delight, parents trudging up behind them, some towing sleds, others snapping photos. Ava parked in a small lot, scanning for Jack's sedan. She found a spot near the entrance, turned off the engine, and helped the kids gather their plastic sleds from the trunk. Emma hopped from foot to foot, breath visible in the cold. "Where is he?" she asked, eyes sweeping the parking area. Ethan shielded his eyes with a mitten, peering around. "Maybe we got here first." Ava checked her phone, but before she could unlock it, a familiar figure strode into view, boots crunching in the snow. Jack waved, his jacket zipped up, a warm scarf around his neck. "There's Dad," Emma chirped, racing across the snowy lot. Jack's grin was immediate as he caught her in a half-hug. "You guys beat me, huh?" he teased. Ethan hurried over, brandishing his sled triumphantly. Ava followed more sedately, carrying the thermos in a small tote, smiling at the eager group. "It's a great day for sledding," she said, glancing up at the cloudless sky. "Might be cold, but no crazy winds." Jack nodded, appreciative. "I'm ready." He turned to the twins. "Show me how this is done. I haven't been on a sled in ages." Emma grabbed Jack's hand, leading him toward the hill, while Ethan bounded ahead. Ava fell into step beside Jack, noticing his hesitant excitement, like he wanted to live up to their expectations and wasn't entirely sure if he'd make a fool of himself. At the top of the slope, the children wasted no time. Emma positioned her sled and gave a whoop as she glided down, her laughter echoing across the snow. Ethan followed close behind, adopting a prone position on his sled and zipping down even faster. Jack and Ava stood at the crest, watching with amusement as the kids tumbled off at the bottom, giggling uncontrollably. "Looks like they're professionals," Jack joked. "Think I can keep up?" Ava grinned, a playful spark in her eyes. "Only one way to find out." So Jack braced himself, placed the sled down, and attempted a graceful launch. He started smoothly, but halfway down he veered off track and landed with a soft thud in a mound of snow. Laughing despite himself, he struggled to his feet, wiping flakes off his coat. Emma and Ethan whooped from a few feet away, having witnessed his less-than-elegant finish. Ava couldn't hold in her own laughter as she slid down after him on a small sled, making a more controlled landing. "You're out of practice," she teased gently, approaching Jack at the bottom of the hill, her cheeks flushed from the cold air. "Need any pointers?" He smirked through a light dusting of snow on his hair. "I'll get the hang of it again. Just watch me." The rest of the hour dissolved into a joyful flurry of ascents and descents, shrieks of laughter and shared tumbles. Each time Ava or the children slid down, Jack tried to refine his technique, eventually managing a relatively smooth run. At one point, Emma asked to ride with him, and they both screamed with exhilaration, a mix of fear and delight, sliding in tandem. Ethan experimented with spinning. Ava joined in for group photos, using her phone's camera to capture snapshots of Jack helping Emma adjust her mitten, Ethan throwing a playful snowball at Jack, and the entire family sprawled on the ground after a particularly chaotic descent. Around midday, Emma's and Ethan's energy began to wane, and the allure of the thermos of hot cocoa in Ava's tote became strong. "I'm thirsty," Ethan announced, trudging up the slope with reddened cheeks. Ava signaled everyone to regroup, leading them to a picnic table at the edge of the park. She poured steaming cocoa into small plastic cups, handing them out. The kids blew on the liquid, relishing its warmth. Jack accepted his cup with a grateful nod, sinking onto the bench. "This is wonderful," he murmured, sipping and exhaling in contentment. He gazed at the children who were already planning one more run, cocoa in hand. "Thank you for including me, Ava. Really." Ava shrugged, smiling gently. "I'm glad you wanted to come. They love showing you their little adventures." He studied her a moment. "And what about you? Do you like me being part of these moments?" His question held a note of vulnerability, a fear that she might see him as an intrusion. She paused, then nodded. "Yes, I do," she replied quietly. "Sure, it's an adjustment. I was used to doing these things on my own with them, but it's better having you around. They gain so much from having both parents." Jack's expression warmed. He set down his cocoa, taking a small step closer to her on the bench. "I'm discovering just how much I gain too." A flicker of nerves fluttered in Ava's stomach at how close he was. She averted her gaze, cheeks heating from more than just the hot cocoa. Before she could respond, Emma bounded over, pink scarf trailing in the wind. "Mom, Dad, can Ethan and I go to the smaller slope over there?" She pointed to a gentler hill crowded with younger children. "We can do a couple more runs, please?" Jack exchanged a glance with Ava, silently checking if it was safe. Ava nodded. "Sure, but be careful and stay where we can see you." With that, Emma raced off, dragging Ethan along, who nearly spilled the last of his cocoa in his rush. Ava exhaled a light laugh and turned back to Jack. "They have bottomless energy." He smiled at the twins' retreating forms. "It's amazing to watch, and a bit exhausting to keep up." They sat there a moment, observing the scene, a park filled with families, laughter carried on crisp air, the sun reflecting brilliantly on the snow. Ava felt a surge of gratefulness for the everyday magic of it all. Eventually, Jack broke the companionable silence. "I've been wanting to talk to you about something," he said carefully. "I've been thinking about the future, like the next steps. Right now we see each other on weekends, some weeknights when possible. But as the kids get older, there might be more I can do, like pick them up from school occasionally, help with homework, that kind of thing." Ava listened, a cautious tension knotting in her chest. "I appreciate that," she said. "I'm sure Emma and Ethan would love it. It might take some juggling with your schedule, though. And we should probably make sure we're both comfortable with any arrangement. I'm used to being the sole decision-maker." He nodded slowly, understanding the implication. "I'm not trying to force anything," he promised gently. "But I do want to be consistent. And eventually, maybe we can talk about me having some overnights with them. Not immediately," he added, seeing Ava's eyes widen slightly. "But someday, if it feels right. I want them to be able to spend time in my space, see another side of me." A swirl of conflicting feelings rose inside Ava. The idea of the twins sleeping over at Jack's penthouse, miles away from their neighborhood, felt daunting. Yet she recognized his desire to form a deeper bond, to share his home with them. "We'd have to see how the kids feel about that," she began. They're only just getting used to you. But if they're comfortable, and if we talk it through—" He leaned closer, placing a gloved hand gently over hers, which rested on the bench. "We'll do it step by step," he said softly. "You're their mother. I respect your guidance. I just want to be there for them in every way a dad should." She bit her lip, her heart thumping. "I know, and thank you for asking first." Their eyes locked. Ava saw genuine care, unwavering resolve, and a hint of something more than just co-parent camaraderie. She inhaled shakily, realizing how close they were. It would be so easy to lean in, to close that gap. For a fraction of a second, she wondered if Jack might kiss her. The thought sent a thrill of heat up her spine. But just then, Ethan's voice cut across the snowy expanse. "Mom, Dad, watch this!" He waved from the top of the smaller slope, Emma standing beside him. They were poised for a daring tandem ride, perched together on one sled. Jack and Ava both pivoted, laughing, the moment of tension dissolving into the brisk winter air. They cheered as the children zoomed down, squealing and clutching each other, eventually rolling off in a heap at the bottom, bursting with laughter. Ava snapped a quick photo on her phone, capturing their joy. The rest of the afternoon unfolded in a similar pattern. More sledding, more bursts of laughter, occasional breaks to sip cocoa or simply sit and talk. Clouds drifted over the sun, bringing an early twilight. By the time the group decided to leave, Emma and Ethan were thoroughly tired, cheeks rosy with cold, but radiating happiness. Jack helped load the sleds into Ava's car, tucking them next to a jumble of scarves and gloves. The children bickered sleepily about who was the fastest. Ava beckoned them inside, then turned back to Jack, giving a small smile. "Thank you for coming," she said. "They'll be chattering about this all week." He exhaled, smiling in return. "I love seeing them in these simple, everyday experiences. It means a lot to me, more than I can express." Without overthinking, Ava reached out, briefly squeezing his hand. "It means a lot to them too," she murmured, "and to me." The weight of that admission lingered between them, words unspoken but felt deeply. Jack opened his mouth, perhaps to say something else, but then Emma rolled down the window of the car, calling out, "Dad, when can we do this again?" Jack laughed, withdrawing his hand gently. "Soon, I promise," he called back, stepping away to let Ava slide into the driver's seat. "Text me when you get home, so I know you're safe," he added, meeting Ava's eyes. She nodded. "Will do. See you soon." Then, with a parting wave, she pulled out of the lot, leaving Jack standing in the snowy dusk, hands in his pockets, a broad smile lingering on his face. That evening, after the kids had crashed early from sheer exhaustion, Ava sat down with her phone to look at the photos she'd taken, snapshots of Emma mid-flight on a sled, Ethan giggling after a wipeout, Jack grinning through a face full of snow. There was a group selfie of all four of them, cheeks pressed close, eyes shining. As she scrolled, her heart ached with both joy and a tinge of longing for what they had now and for all the time they'd missed. A message popped up from Jack, asking if the kids were asleep and whether they enjoyed the day. She chuckled, typing a quick confirmation. Then a second message arrived. "I know we're taking this all a day at a time, but sometimes I wish I could freeze these moments, like the four of us laughing at the park, and never let go." Ava read it twice, tears prickling at her eyes. She recalled their moment on the bench, their hands brushing, that near intimacy. Something stirred deep within her, a realization that she might be ready to open her heart again, not just for the children's sake, but for herself. She took a breath, typed back, "Me too. Let's keep building more of those moments." Her finger hovered over the send button. Then she pressed it, feeling the soft hum of possibility wrap around her like a blanket. Yes, there would be challenges, complexities, media scrutiny perhaps, and the need to mesh two vastly different worlds. But she believed in this fragile, growing bond. The silent snowfall outside reminded her that each flake, unique in design, could accumulate into something beautiful. In the same way, each simple day, each sled run, each hot cocoa chat, each shared moment might accumulate into a life they all craved. With that thought, she set her phone aside and turned off the lights, content to let the day's memories guide her into a peaceful sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, the warmth of a family still in the making, enveloped her heart. A faint glow of morning light slipped through Ava's bedroom curtains, rousing her from sleep. She blinked for a moment, disoriented by how warm and peaceful she felt. Slowly, she pushed herself upright, memories from the previous day drifting back, a swirl of sleds, laughter, and snowy tumbledowns. Her heart expanded with a quiet joy. Emma and Ethan had spent half of their bedtime recounting every ride, every near crash, still breathless from excitement. Padding into the living room, Ava peered out the window. The snow had stopped overnight, leaving the streets glittering under a pale winter sun. She brewed a pot of coffee, yawning as the aroma filled the small kitchen. These mornings were her chance to regroup before the day rushed in, when the twins were still asleep and she could gather her thoughts. She remembered the final text from Jack the night before, that wistful confession about wanting to preserve every moment. Their conversation hung in her mind, warming her more effectively than the coffee in her mug. She'd reread his words twice before drifting off, mulling over what it meant, that he wanted more than just fatherhood. He seemed to yearn for a sense of family with her and the kids. But how far did that sentiment go? Were they just forging a stable co-parenting arrangement, or was something else taking root? Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, half expecting another text from Jack, but saw instead a message from her friend, Claire. "Hey, can we talk? Something you need to see." A sense of unease nudged Ava's stomach. Claire was a fellow freelance photographer who'd once navigated the tricky intersection of business and personal entanglements. She seldom sent cryptic messages. Ava typed back, "Sure, call when you can." She took another sip of coffee, suspecting nothing too dire, perhaps a reference to a local photography gig or a last-minute job opportunity. But moments later, Claire's number popped up on the screen. Ava answered quietly, moving to the far side of the living room so she wouldn't wake the twins. "Hey, what's up?" Ava asked softly, cradling the phone to her ear. Claire's voice carried a note of urgency. "Have you been online yet this morning?" Ava's brow furrowed. "No, not really. Why? Something happened?" Claire let out a sigh. "I got a tip from a friend in media. Seems there's an article circulating, some gossip piece speculating about Jack Linwood's secret family. It's in one of those scandal blogs, but you know how quickly this stuff spreads." A jolt of adrenaline shot through Ava. She swallowed. "Are you sure? I mean, I haven't seen anything like that before." "I can send you the link," Claire offered, her tone sympathetic. "It's not super detailed, mostly rumors. Mentions that Linwood was spotted attending a children's school recital and sledding in a public park with a woman and 2 kids. They have a couple of grainy photos. Someone must have recognized him or snapped them on a phone." Ava's heart pounded. A swirl of images raced through her mind. Jack at the school's winter recital, them at the park, or even the museum outing. She had been so grateful that no paparazzi had intruded, but perhaps all it took was a random bystander with a camera, hawking pictures to a gossip site. "Are the kids' faces clear?" she managed, dread coiling in her stomach. "Blurry," Claire replied. "Thankfully. But some commenters are speculating that these might be Linwood's unknown children. There's talk of him leading a double life. It's ugly, Ava." Shaking slightly, Ava closed her eyes. She had feared this possibility. The moment Jack's high-profile status would crash against their quiet existence. "Thank you for telling me," she murmured. "I appreciate the heads up." "How are you holding up?" Claire asked gently. "This must be a shock." Ava let out a shaky breath. I'm okay. Worried about how this might affect Emma and Ethan, and how Jack will respond. I'll talk to him." They wrapped up the call, and Ava sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Sure enough, she found the gossip piece easily. The photos were grainy, taken from a distance, but it was unmistakably Jack, his tall figure, that upscale winter coat. She recognized the slight tilt of Emma's head, the bright color of Ethan's jacket. Thankfully, neither child's face was fully visible, and the blog hadn't uncovered Ava's name. But the tone was insinuating, painting Jack as a secretive millionaire who might have fathered children without acknowledging them. Ava's stomach roiled. Just then, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Ethan, rubbing his eyes, hair tousled. "Mom," he mumbled, "you're up early." Forcing herself to set aside the phone, Ava gave him a quick hug. "Morning, sweetie. Want some breakfast?" He nodded, yawning. Emma soon joined them, equally sleepy, and the usual morning bustle overtook Ava's panic. She scrambled eggs, poured cereal, listened to the twins' half-dreamy recollections of yesterday's sledding. She smiled where appropriate, but her mind kept flashing back to that article. How quickly could a rumor morph into a media storm? Would reporters show up at their doorstep? By the time she cleared the dishes and dressed for the day, Ava decided to text Jack. She kept it straightforward. "Morning. There's something I need to discuss with you. Can you call me when you're free?" She expected a delay. Maybe he was in a meeting or on a call. But within minutes, her phone rang, Jack's name appearing. She stepped into the bedroom for privacy, heart thumping. "Hey," she began. "Thanks for getting back so fast." His tone was instantly concerned. "You okay? Is something wrong with the kids?" "No, they're fine," she reassured. "But a friend told me there's a gossip article about you, about us. Possibly about Emma and Ethan." A pause crackled on the line. She imagined him tensing, perhaps pacing. "I see," he said quietly. "I suspected it might happen eventually. Did you read it?" "I did. It's vague but insinuates you have a secret family. They used some distant photos from the recital or the park. The kids aren't clearly shown, but it's definitely you." A slow exhale came from his end. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said, frustration edging into his voice. "I'll have my PR team handle it, issue a no comment or get them to pull the photos if possible. Gossip blogs thrive on speculation, but they rarely have staying power unless bigger outlets pick it up." Ava bit her lip, anxiety gnawing at her. What if they do pick it up, though? Could this escalate? "I don't want Emma and Ethan hounded by reporters or your corporate rivals. They're just kids." Jack's voice softened. "I understand. I'm going to do everything I can to protect them. And you. You have my word." She sank onto the bed, pressing a hand to her forehead. "Should I worry about paparazzi showing up at the school or our home?" "It's unlikely at this point," Jack replied carefully. "The story is still small, but I'll alert my security and PR teams to keep watch. If any bigger publication tries to run with it, we'll intervene. In the meantime, I can arrange for security detail. Discreet, of course, if you feel unsafe." Ava's instinct was to refuse. She couldn't imagine men in suits loitering around her cul-de-sac, but the mention of it showed how serious Jack was. "Let's see how it unfolds," she said, voice trembling slightly. "I don't want to alarm the kids." "Agreed," Jack said gently. "I'll keep you updated, and if you see anything suspicious, call me. If you want, I'll talk to Emma and Ethan about not engaging with strangers or letting anyone photograph them." She nodded, though he couldn't see. "Yes, maybe we should. They're old enough to understand some boundaries, just let's be measured in what we tell them. I don't want to scare them." "Of course. Ava," he added, tone softening. "I'm sorry. You and the kids shouldn't have to deal with this. My life, my profile, it brings complications." She swallowed, voice quieter. "We knew it could happen. We'll handle it, right?" "Together," he agreed firmly. They ended the call, a heaviness lingering in Ava's chest. She had to maintain normalcy for the twins, who were currently sprawled on the living room floor, playing with markers and construction paper. For now, she decided she wouldn't mention the article. Unless it escalated, they didn't need that worry. Days passed and life continued in its familiar rhythms. The rumor didn't vanish, but it also didn't explode into front-page news. A handful of gossip sites rehashed the same vague story, speculating about Linwood's mystery woman and possible offspring, but mainstream media hadn't taken the bait. Ava breathed easier, though she felt a constant undercurrent of caution. When she picked up the kids from school, she made sure no strangers hovered. She checked the street before leaving the house. Jack, for his part, texted daily updates. His PR team was quietly contacting the blogs to remove unauthorized photos of minors, citing privacy concerns. A few complied, others refused, citing free speech and public domain. But so far, no local news reporters were parked outside their door, so they counted it as a small victory. Within a week, the buzz diminished. A new celebrity scandal took center stage, overshadowing the inconclusive rumors about Jack. Ava exhaled relief when Claire reported that the blog's mention had slid down their homepage, overshadowed by Hollywood drama. It seemed the crisis might have passed, for now. Yet the scare had an effect. Ava found herself more guarded in public spaces. She'd glance over her shoulder at the grocery store if someone looked at them too long. When the kids proposed another sledding day, Ava hesitated, recalling the candid photos. Jack sensed her trepidation and offered a private alternative, a friend's large backyard with a slope. But Ava didn't want to hide indoors forever. She eventually agreed to the park again, deciding life had to go on. One afternoon, as Ava tidied the living room, Emma approached hesitantly. "Mom, can I ask something?" the girl said, fiddling with a crayon. "Sure, sweetheart," Ava replied, setting aside a magazine. Emma bit her lip. "Last week, you and Dad talked in your bedroom with the door closed, and sometimes you seem worried when you look at your phone. Is something wrong?" Ava's heart clenched. She'd hoped to shield them from the turmoil, but kids were perceptive. "Everything's okay," she murmured, pulling Emma onto the couch beside her. "There was just a silly story online about your dad making stuff up. We were making sure it didn't bother you or your brother." Emma frowned. "What story?" "Someone took pictures of him at your recital and at the park, but they said silly things like he'd kept you secret." Ava tried to frame it lightly. "It's not true. We just wanted to be sure you're safe if anyone tries to take more pictures." Emma's eyes widened, a mix of confusion and concern. "They think we're a secret? But we're not. We just met him." Ava smiled gently. "Exactly. We're not hiding. Sometimes grown-ups in the media like to guess things without all the facts. It's part of your dad's life because he's a well-known businessman." Emma seemed thoughtful. "So is that why he's careful about pictures and stuff?" "Yes," Ava said softly, "but don't worry too much. If you ever feel uncomfortable, tell me or your dad, okay?" Emma nodded, resting her head on Ava's shoulder. After a moment, she added, "I hope Dad's not in trouble. I like that he comes to our school things." Ava's chest tightened with affection. "He's not in trouble, honey. He just wants to protect you." Emma gave a small smile, then scampered off to show Ethan the new sticker sheet she'd found. Ava slumped back on the couch, relieved that her daughter didn't seem traumatized by the concept of gossip, but it reinforced how fragile this new family dynamic could be if more intrusions occurred. That evening, Jack stopped by unannounced, something unusual given how carefully they scheduled visits. Ava answered the door to find him on the porch, hands in his coat pockets, face set with determination. "Everything okay?" she asked, stepping aside so he could enter. He nodded, exhaling a visible puff of breath. "Yeah, I just wanted to see you and the kids, maybe share some news. Can I come in for a bit?" "Of course." She led him inside, where Emma and Ethan were watching an educational show on the small TV. They perked up immediately, greeting Jack with excitement and calls of, "Dad!" He settled on the floor beside them, chatting about their day, while Ava grabbed a couple of sodas from the fridge, offering him one. Once the kids drifted back to their show, Jack motioned for Ava to join him near the hallway. "I spoke to my legal team," he began in a quiet voice. "They wanted to confirm parental rights paperwork. You know, ensuring everything is recognized officially, that Emma and Ethan are legally acknowledged as my children. The process is straightforward, but I need your consent and signature to finalize it." Ava's heartbeat quickened. She had known this conversation was coming. Jack had a legitimate right to be on their birth certificates, to formalize custody and visitation, yet hearing it stated so plainly made her pause. "And that means—" "What, exactly?" she asked carefully. "It means that from a legal standpoint, I'm their father, with all the responsibilities and rights that entails," he explained gently. "I wouldn't do anything without your agreement, but if something happened to me or if decisions about their care were needed, we'd have clarity. Plus, it could help protect them from any claims that they're not recognized or deserving of my support." A swirl of emotions tightened Ava's throat. Fear of losing sole authority, relief that he wanted accountability, and a pang of acceptance that their world was changing. "I understand," she managed. "I want them to have that security too. We can discuss details with a lawyer, I guess." Jack reached for her hand, voice low. "I'm not trying to upend your life or take them away or anything drastic. I want to make it official that I'm here for them, legally, financially, emotionally. I also know it's a big step, so we'll proceed at your pace." Ava glanced at the living room where Emma and Ethan giggled at a cartoon character's mishap. She squeezed Jack's hand, letting out a trembling breath. "They deserve that security. We'll figure it out. Together." He nodded, relief and gratitude evident. "Thank you." For a moment, they lingered in the hallway, hands intertwined. The hush of the night wrapped around them, the soft glow of a lamp casting warm shadows on the walls. Ava felt the magnitude of it all. Media rumors, legal documents, a father stepping into the lives of children he'd never known until recently. Yet his consistent presence and earnest heart had formed a steady reassurance. She wasn't alone in this anymore. "Come watch with us, Dad," Ethan called from the living room. The invitation made Ava smile. She guided Jack back into the cozy space where they both squeezed onto the couch with the kids. The four of them nestled together, enthralled by the silly cartoon, exchanging quiet laughter. Ava passed around sodas. Jack draped an arm protectively behind the children, occasionally meeting Ava's eyes with a gentle nod. Though an uncertain future loomed in that moment, they felt like any other family sharing a simple evening. Ava allowed herself to lean into the warmth of that closeness. Yes, there were legalities to handle, rumors that might resurface, big corporate worlds to navigate. But for now, they had togetherness, and the glow of trust forging something that felt remarkably like home. A hush settled over the house as twilight fell. Ava stood by the window, gazing into the snowy suburban street where Jack's car had just disappeared from view. Only moments ago he had departed, having spent another quiet evening bonding with Emma and Ethan, this time helping them solve a tricky jigsaw puzzle. Even after so many weeks, it still warmed her heart to see how effortlessly he integrated into their routine, as though they were making up for lost time in small daily ways. She turned from the window to find her children sprawled on the living room rug, coloring the final pages of a winter-themed activity book. Ethan glanced up, stifling a yawn. "Mom, can we do something special for Dad's birthday next month?" he asked, voice hushed so as not to disturb the sense of calm. Emma perked up at the question, nodding fervently. Ava smiled softly. "Sure, we can plan something. Do you have ideas?" Emma tapped her crayon on the page. "Maybe we can make him a card or bake a cake, something personal." "We can decorate it with music notes," Ethan chimed in, "or pictures of a sled. He likes music and sledding with us." A flutter of warmth passed through Ava. This was the kind of everyday closeness she had once assumed impossible. A father's birthday, children plotting homemade gifts. "We have time to decide," she said. "I'm sure he'll love whatever you come up with." She tucked them into bed soon after, each child worn out from a full day of school and chores. Emma insisted on recounting the puzzle fiasco, how Jack kept mixing up certain corner pieces. Ethan declared it the best puzzle night ever. Ava listened with half-lidded eyes, lulled by their chatter. Finally they sank into sleep, their breathing turning soft and even. She pressed a kiss to each forehead, snapped off the lights, and retreated down the hall. In her bedroom, she settled on the edge of the bed, phone in hand. True to pattern, a text from Jack had already arrived. "Got home safe. Miss them, and you, already. Thank you for another peaceful evening." A mild blush rose to her cheeks at the "and you" phrase. She typed a reply, "We miss you too. Kids can't stop talking about your puzzle skills. They might have rated them a 6/10. His answer came fast. "Ouch. I promise to improve. Sleep well, Ava. Talk soon." Ava stared at the phone for a moment, rereading the messages. Through text, it was so easy to sense a gentle undercurrent between them, something that transcended co-parenting. She locked the phone, forcing herself not to overthink. The closeness made her happy, but fear still lingered in dark corners of her mind. Their entire family dynamic rested on a delicate balance: Jack's corporate responsibilities, potential media scrutiny, the emotional well-being of Emma and Ethan, and her own vulnerable heart. She exhaled, switched off the bedside lamp, and drifted into a dreamless sleep. The next few weeks flashed by in a pleasant rhythm of winter activities. Jack occasionally picked the twins up from school, surprising them with short outings, a visit to a bookstore, an afternoon treat at a nearby bakery, always making sure to keep Ava informed and to respect her boundaries. Meanwhile, Ava worked on photography gigs around the city, and whenever she'd mention an assignment near Jack's offices, he'd casually suggest stopping by for a quick lunch or a peek at his workspace. They orchestrated one such visit, letting Emma and Ethan wander through Linwood Enterprises' top floor on a quiet Saturday. The children marveled at the sweeping skyline views, the hush of plush carpets, and the massive digital boards mapping out business expansions. Jack guided them gently, pointing out interesting details while Ava watched, slightly awed that their separate worlds were interlacing so fluidly. Whenever the worry of renewed media attention crossed her mind, Ava found reassurance in how discreetly Jack's team handled everything. Photos of the kids never appeared in major outlets. He had a firm policy that no press release or event mentioned them by name. Wordlessly, he was honoring his vow to protect them, letting the rumors fade away. It comforted Ava more than she'd admit. Amid that growing sense of security, talk of finalizing the twins' legal status quietly gained momentum. Jack's lawyers forwarded paperwork to Ava, explaining that these documents would update birth records, formally establishing him as their father under the law. Ava scheduled a meeting with a child-focused attorney of her own, wanting to ensure everything was in the children's best interest. To her relief, the entire process felt less adversarial and more like a thoughtful plan to secure Emma's and Ethan's future. Shared custody, guardianship, inheritance rights, a safety net if anything ever happened to either parent. "You're making the right call," her attorney assured, scanning the proposed agreement. "He's showing up, being consistent, and the kids are clearly benefiting." Ava nodded, a swirl of gratitude and anxiety coiling in her chest. Yes, it was the right call, even if it left her with a low hum of nerves. Finally, the day came when she and Jack met at a small law office downtown. The children stayed with a babysitter, allowing the adults space to sign formal documents without confusion or distraction. The neutral-toned waiting area felt eerily calm. Marble floors, potted plants, walls lined with certificates. Ava arrived first, heart thudding. She wore a simple navy blouse, her camera bag left behind so she could focus on the paperwork. Jack walked in soon after, greeting her with a subdued smile. His usual confident stride was softened by an undercurrent of nerves. "You ready?" he asked quietly. She nodded, her mouth too dry for an immediate response. Together they followed the attorney into a quiet conference room. The process wasn't dramatic. No grand speeches, no drawn-out arguments. They each reviewed the final wording. Jack's attorneys had drafted paternal recognition forms, clarifying shared parental rights. Ava's attorney had suggested a collaborative plan. Emma and Ethan would primarily live with Ava, with flexible visitation for Jack, plus a clause about future modifications as the kids got older. It felt balanced, ensuring the children's daily life remained stable while welcoming Jack's role. They read each page carefully, signed in a few places, notarized the documents under the watchful eye of a staff member. Then it was done. "That's it?" Ava murmured, stepping outside onto the sidewalk with Jack by her side. She gazed at the ring of tall buildings around them, the afternoon sun reflecting off mirrored windows. Jack exhaled, still holding the pen he'd used, as though not ready to let go. "Legally, yes," he replied. "I guess it's official. I'm recognized as their father in every sense." He gave her a searching look. "How do you feel?" A small laugh escaped her, tinged with relief. Like we just secured something precious, but also maybe a bit emotional. He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers before she could think to protest. "Me too," he said softly. "I can't explain how much it means that you've accepted me and let me be part of their lives. I'm not perfect, but I promise I'll always do my best for them." Ava felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She squeezed his hand. "I see that every day, and they do too. Emma and Ethan talk about you like you've always been around, like you're the missing puzzle piece they finally found." Jack's gaze glimmered with gratitude. In that moment, the noise of the city seemed to vanish, leaving only the two of them, hands entwined, hearts beating in tandem. Ava's fear of the spotlight, the memory of those scandalous rumors, all receded before the reality of this man, steady, devoted, longing for family. She opened her mouth, words faltering. "Jack, I want you to know that I'm not just letting you in for the kids. There might be something more here between us. I feel it. I just don't know how to—" Before she could finish, he carefully leaned in, brushing a gentle kiss across her forehead. The contact sent warmth pulsing through her. "I know," he murmured against her temple. "I feel it too. Let's not rush. We'll keep building trust, for us and for them, one step at a time." A wave of relief and joy cascaded through Ava. Yes, she thought. One step at a time was enough. She leaned her head against his shoulder, letting the busy sidewalk flow around them. Eventually, they separated, hailing their respective rides. Jack offered to drop her home, but she had an errand to run first, so they arranged to meet that evening at her place for a celebratory dinner with Emma and Ethan. Nothing fancy, just a toast to the new chapter in their lives. Ava watched him climb into his car, waving from the open window, the sun catching his hair. Her chest felt full, as though a locked door had finally swung open, letting in fresh air and light. That night, the four of them gathered around the modest dining table. Emma and Ethan had been briefed in gentle terms. Dad had signed special papers confirming he was officially part of their family. The kids reacted with whoops and giggles, though much of the legal nuance was lost on them. To them, Dad was Dad. There was no question, but they sensed this was cause for celebration. Ethan brought out his new harmonica, attempting a congratulatory tune that squeaked but drew laughs. Emma, not to be outdone, whistled along. Jack and Ava exchanged amused smiles. Dinner was a simple roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and fresh rolls. Yet it felt festive, like a holiday, minus the formalities. Afterward, they sat by the fireplace in the living room, sipping homemade cocoa. The twins told stories about a recent art project at school, each trying to speak over the other. Jack listened intently, occasionally casting a soft look toward Ava. as if to acknowledge the sweetness of it all. As bedtime neared, Emma and Ethan insisted on hugs from Jack first. He obliged, scooping them close in turn. "You guys know how much I love you, right?" he murmured. They nodded solemnly, eyes shining. Ava's heart thumped at the sight. This acceptance, this unity. If someone had told her a year ago that she'd be sitting here watching her once unknown children embrace their father with such trust, she wouldn't have believed it. Finally, the twins drifted off to their bedrooms, leaving Ava and Jack alone in the fire's low glow. She sank onto the couch, pulling a throw blanket over her lap. Jack settled beside her, close but not pressing. For a moment, neither spoke, simply basking in the hush of the home they now shared more and more often. Ava fiddled with a loose thread on the blanket, voice hushed. "Sometimes I think about how different things could have been if we'd realized we had a connection years ago, if you'd known from the start." Jack exhaled a soft sigh. "I do too. It haunts me sometimes, the milestones I missed. But all we can do is move forward. And from now on, I'll be here. I hope you believe that." She turned to him, eyes reflecting the flickering firelight. "I do believe you," she whispered, "because you've shown it over and over." The silence was charged, a gentle current flowing between them. She reached for his hand, and he met her halfway, their fingers interlocking. After a breath, she shifted closer. He leaned in, hesitancy melting away. Softly, their lips met, a tender, cautious kiss that lasted but a few heartbeats, enough to ignite warmth far beyond the fireplace's embers. Ava's pulse pounded, as though the moment was rewriting all the tension and longing that had simmered beneath the surface. When they pulled apart, she felt tears threaten. "I've been scared," she admitted, voice trembling, "to let myself care for you this way. But I do, Jack." He rested his forehead against hers. "Ava, I'll never force anything. I want to be part of this family in every sense if you'll have me." Her breath caught. For an instant, the future unfurled in her mind. More nights by this fireplace, more birthdays and recitals, maybe even a day when they'd share a single home instead of meeting in two. She didn't know the details, but she knew the feeling, an overwhelming sense of belonging. She answered the only way she could, by leaning in and kissing him again, softly, letting the closeness speak for her. It was an unspoken promise, a vow that they would figure out their relationship, that Emma and Ethan would grow up with parents who, despite a complicated start, had found their way to each other. Eventually, the fire burned low. Outside, the snow glistened under moonlight, a silent witness to the final tapestry of family forming in that humble living room. Ava and Jack lingered together, hands woven, hearts unguarded. They were done with secrets, done with fear. Now, they had trust, love, and the promise of a future they'd shape step by step. In the hush of that winter night, it felt like the purest kind of miracle, one that began of all places at a Christmas gala, in a single unexpected moment when a CEO recognized his own face in the eyes of singing twins. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.